Hey, what's going on, everybody? And thanks for joining us again. We're live. And don't forget, the whole purpose of the live show is to keep you involved. And I think today's topics are going to be some good ones. So be sure to dive into the comments to keep the dialogue alive. Starting off, it seems that Joe Rogan has recently exposed alien technology in the U.S. government in his recent podcast episode. Following that up, a misbehaved child at an art museum has costed his parents a whopping $132,000 debt. What a story. And finally, we're going to wrap it up here. You're not going to find this anywhere besides in the dialogue of the show. It's not going to be in the thumbnail or anything else because we got to avoid the algorithms. But Donald Trump is assembling his Avengers, and, the pot got sweeter. I didn't think it could, but it's turning into quite the honeypot. So before we divulge into all of that, let me introduce the Pickle Gallery. Joining us in the wing, the digital wing here first, Silent Destroyer. Silent, how you doing today, brother?
Hey, guys, I'm doing great. How's everybody doing?
Hey, it's a beautiful day, right? Can't complain. Can't complain. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm really excited for this show. Let's get it going.
Hey, let's get it. And finally, joining us as always from Just Another Day TV, Ricky, how you doing today?
I'm blessed, brother. We outside.
Every time we're inside.
Yes. We're always outside, though. So it's a mental thing. It's a mental thing. It's a mental thing.
It's it. It's a state of mind.
Yes,
Being outside
sir.
is a state of mind.
Yes,
That's
sir.
a Jamaican thing, right?
Yeah, man. I don't know Irish.
You'll find your beach. All right. So how you doing today, Ricky?
All right, no complaints, man. I'm happy to be here. We got a great show ahead of us, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, that all being said, I can't do it without my good friend and my co-host, David Cunningham. How you doing today, David?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. The Kelsey brothers just got a $100 million contract for their podcast. So I think our chances are pretty good to beat that. $200 million.
I'm sitting here trying to sell like a $50 advertisement spot. Come on.
Yeah, so if you would like to pay this podcast $200 million for our voices constantly, you know what? We'll do another show a week.
Here's the real question. How high? Right now, we're asking for $50, David. How high does that number have to get for you to go, Kamala is the president? How much? $50 isn't enough. But somewhere between $50 and $200 million, I think we're getting you to say Kamala's president.
I think, what? I could be swayed by a few
$100
million. I mean, let's start the bidding at 100 mil and see where that gets us. Let's shoot high.
Seriously, what would be the lowest number? $1 million. You've $100,000 is life-changing. You're looking at a kid with a mortgage. I mean, that's life-changing.
That's a nice chunk of change. 100,000, I'd probably do it.
It's funny you tell yourself like it's fine. I'm still voting for who I'm voting for, as you counteract that with like 20,000 going the other way.
Yeah. Oh well, I get. I'll pay off my mortgage. I'll be all right. I don't have to worry about interest rates for a while.
Yeah. Hey, $200 million. $200 million.
Well, who will do anything for $200 million? Brian, how are we doing?
That's absolutely true. Be Rizzle My Shizzle will endorse whoever pays me $200 million. I just couldn't not. I mean, it's only 4 years. I think I could hunker down for 4 years endorsing the devil. Let's go.
So for the first topic of the day here, we're looking at episode 2194, Luis Elizondo. All right, so Louis or Louis or Louise, this gentleman is a former head of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And he investigated UFOs for the Pentagon and the United States government, now referred to as unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs. A veteran of the U.S. Army, he has worked in counterintelligence and counterterrorism worldwide. His new book, Imminent Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs, is available now. So again, that's episode 2194. Here, before we kind of dive into the episode, we're going to let the episode speak for itself. But I propose one thing to the Davids of the world, whether that be my staunch co-host or my father, the Davids tend to always lean on, if these conspiracy theories were true and the government was hiding all these secrets, somebody would be saying something somewhere sometime. And yet when they come out and talk to us, we just don't listen. Like, that's just also the balance to this whole thing. So I'm just going to suggest, David, when the folks come and tell you, okay, I was working for the Pentagon, this is the boots on the ground, I suggest if you're going to use as the mechanism of evaluating this, why aren't the folks talking? Well, when the folks talk, listen. So, Brian, can we go to the JRE clip 1 here?
How much of this is theoretical and how much of this is observed from recovered vehicles?
I am not allowed to talk about what the government may or may not have in its possession, other than that so I went through a very lengthy Pentagon review process. Recently, I wrote, I won't talk about it here, but I wrote something, and I had to go through Pentagon to have a review process, and it took almost a year. In this thing I wrote, I talk about up to the part I can talk about, and they approved for me to talk about up to that point. When it comes to what the government may or may not have in its possession, all I can simply say is that there is very compelling evidence to suggest that the U.S. government is in absolute possession of exotic material that is not made by humans. Now, beyond that, I can't really expound upon. I haven't been given permission to talk about it. But what I can say is what I've already said for the record, which has been approved by the Pentagon. I won't get in trouble by saying it. Is that we are there's very compelling data to suggest that we are in possession of.
Why is the Pentagon teasing us? Why do they tell you? Why are they allowing you to say we are in possession of something that was not made by human beings, but not allowed to elaborate, not allowed to show these very compelling videos that you're talking about that you've seen?
I don't. Well, 2 reasons. I don't think they have a choice. I think with now the introduction of cell phones and Ring cameras, the cat's out of the bag. It's the worst kept secret at this point. 2, there is a faction, unlike before in the Cold War, I believe there is a faction of people inside the government that do want this conversation to occur. But equally, there's still a faction of people that are very mad with me. They do not want me having this conversation. And mark my words, just by me being on your show, it is going to cause an absolute storm inside the Pentagon, and I am sure the other shoe is going to drop. I promise you, you're going to hear all sorts of stuff. People make stuff up about me trying to discredit this topic, because as many people are in the government that want this topic to be discussed now, there's still some people that do not want this conversation.
So here's the interesting piece. The Mr. Luis here, he provides us 2 major reasons. Like, I love Joe Rogan's, but why are they taunting us? Like, why do they call us crazy for 50 years, then just casually drop documents like a year and a half ago? And it gets like no attention. So we kind of just, again, dip our toe in the pool of desensitizing us towards these types of phenomena. And here's a guy that goes, why are they taunting us? Like, why are they approving you to tell us that these things exist, but you can't tell us what they possibly might be or to the extent at which we know of them? And he provides 2 major reasons. 1, they're toying with us because the cat's out of the bag, and while they still have the decision of trying to hide it, it's becoming ever increasingly difficult to hide it. And so for the sake of preserving public faith, because the public is quickly losing faith in the government. So 1, to preserve that faith, but then also how do you cover up an iPhone video, even if it's an iPhone 5, a video in the plains of Mexico showing some video? How do you walk that off anymore? Before, you could convince us Susie Luhu down the street was crazy because there was no other way of corroborating it beyond her word and the reality we live in. So one, the cat's out of the bag. It's becoming more difficult to hide. So you kind of got to run with the flow of the river. But secondly, and this is the most interesting piece, and it's that you have these battling factions within the government that half of the government feels that we are owed this and that they want us to know. You know, my dad looking at me going, come on, you're telling me somebody that was at that Area 51 wouldn't have said something on their deathbed. One, you would never say something if the threat of you saying something is everyone you know and love will die after you die. We will wipe them out. That will seal lips real quickly. But secondly, if and when they are saying it on their deathbed, if it really isn't getting much amplification, there's no broadcasting of this information, it kind of just lives and dies in that hospital room. I mean, did you forget there's 350 million of us in this tribe? So I think it's pretty safe to say that in a world of 350 million, like, again, that's a number so large, our human brains cannot comprehend the magnitude of 1 versus 350 million. If it is not on Fox News for Big Daddy to see or CNN for your mom to see, like, it doesn't exist for most people. And for the few that it does exist in, the Redditors like David, or those that whisper amongst the internet or whatever, like, that it exists for them and they're just written off as crazy. So I find it fascinating that somebody with such a significant role in the government, right? Former head of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Whoa. I mean, talk about being an authority on the matter. That's the authority on the matter. For this guy to go to the government, submit an essay, to have a long forum, 3-hour conversation saying, these are all the, so I want to give one last major piece to take on that I think validates a lot of what you could experience in this podcast. He talks about those with United States classification clearance. And that is like a really hot commodity in the political sphere. If you were somebody that wanted to get involved in government, you really can sell your clearance to kind of climb the political ladder. If you wanted to go to different roles within the government, something that can help you kind of go across the monkey bars is the clearance that you're given. So I have a friend that had classification in a military role in Saudi Arabia. That's an incredibly difficult role to have. And the lengths he would go to preserve that role, to ensure that even if something happens with my job here in this military base, I have the ability to go elsewhere and there's a high demand. It's kind of like a good analogy would be liquor licenses within your city, right? There's only so many of them. It can be increased, it can be decreased by the city or the state, but there's only so many of them. They're total approval, and the second they're gone forever. So you like work even harder to make sure you preserve it. So here's a guy that goes on probably a 15, 20-minute conversation about his clearance and the lengths that he needs to go to have this conversation, but also preserve that clearance. Because I got to go back and still have this thing. Like I gotta have the validity that I walked in with. So to accomplish that goal, he presents the Pentagon with an essay that suggests everything he wants to talk about. And for him, he needs to walk as close to the line in that essay as he can without crossing it. Because they're not going to tell him what needs to be removed, what he can and can't say. It's either total approval or total disapproval. So he had to speak within the confines of the essay he presented to the Pentagon. So there are points at which Joe Rogan kind of fishes further and he's like, I can only give you this much, but I can't give you the whole picture. Brian, if we could go to JRE 2, this kind of gives a further explanation of that clearance element.
And the government's response was, no, not familiar with it. Well, Here's the actual report from the Department of Defense. This is the actual intelligence report that was released through FOIA. There's a gentleman out there who runs a site called the Black Vault. His name is John Greenwald. He's probably the world authority on Freedom of Information Act, and he has a wealth of data that is out available to the public that he has received from the government. This is one of those documents. This is the document that our own government has no idea apparently exists.
I like how they write it in all caps.
Yeah, that's the old reporting.
So obviously there's some people that don't want this to be released. And obviously there's some people that think that the general public has a right to know.
I believe so. That's been my observations and my experience.
Well, that makes sense. You know, I mean, like when everybody says the CIA does this, like, okay, who?
Well,
who in the CIA?
I didn't
right?
finish though the other part, right? So if they're not here for if they're not friendly,
right,
that leaves them neutral like us,
right, or benevolent.
Benevolent. Now, from a military perspective, and I just want to caveat, I don't agree with this, but I can respect the understanding. You, sir, are a general, and I say to you, and I say, we cannot prove that they're not here to do something bad. But what we do know is that they can interfere. They're very interested in our military capabilities, and they have interfered with our nuclear capabilities, right? Mm-hmm. From a military perspective, that looks an awful lot like something we call IPB, Initial Preparations of the Battle Space, or perhaps even ISR, Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. Whenever we're going to go into a foreign country and invade, we do long-range surveillance. We want to know how the enemy operates, how they react. So even if there's a 2% chance, 5% chance that these things are here to do something malevolent, right? Mm-hmm. Then we probably should not tip our hands to the fact that we are aware of it publicly, because what happens the moment that the bad guys in a foreign country find our surveillance team over the border? We've got 12 hours. We got to invade, because the element of surprise is now over. So some may feel in the government the mere fact of acknowledging this, if there is some sort of malintent, may push up artificially a clock that exists somewhere for these things to say, okay, the foolish humans are now, the cat's out of the bag. They know we're here. We need to go in now for whatever reason they may have. So that is the military mindset potentially of some of these individuals who want to keep this secret.
So they're worried about an actual invasion.
Well, but they have to be. That is
right,
that is the role of our national security apparatus, right? Even if there's a 1% chance,
right,
they have to consider that in their planning and in their decision-making matrix. So, again, going back to what I said, I respect that. I don't agree with it, but I can respect that. If that is the reason why.
So again, there's validity behind these decisions, and I recognize why they have to make these decisions. And beyond just the report that he presents in the clip that we showed, there's a plethora of different documents and evidence that they go through throughout the podcast that really presents a foundation. I mean, you want to get excited. It's like when we started talking about this as kids, when you started a podcast 5-6 years ago, and you're like, hopefully one day we're talking about how aliens are, like, you imagine, and it's here, and it feels surreal. It's like it's in your face, but it kind of happened so slowly that it doesn't feel that, okay, like, is it real? Are we here? It's like, no. The government is now on one of the biggest platforms in the world and has admitted to the fact that this exists. I mean, they start going into the details of the ships. Some of the ships that he was intimately experiencing were wedge-shaped. Can you go into details further? No. The classification that I was given is that I could provide you wedge-shaped. Going beyond that is where I'm limited. So there's points where you get to the line and you get right up to it, but we can't cross it. And there's a respect for why he has to do that, but it also legitimizes the whole thing. Like, to me, there's no fooling around with the fact this is real when you're experiencing a representative of the government who would be authority on this matter intervening and suggesting that this is as real as it ever could have been. With that all being said, I'm going to flip it to the pickle gallery first. I don't know. Silent, what do you think?
I think this is one of those things where you're crazy until you're right. It's very simple for a lot of these guys, right? A lot of them actually talk about it their whole life, and then not until a certain amount of like government approval and government evidence comes out that people were like, oh yeah, they're right. Because at the beginning, people are going to call you crazy because you have no evidence. But as we see, and as he was talking about, there's a lot of things that they know that they have a lot of solid evidence for that they just can't talk about because it's a security compromise. They can lose their jobs. They can compromise the country. They can compromise the military. And what this is showing us is a lot of these guys are right. There are aliens out there. It's just that the proof that we have seen, all the videos that have leaked, all the, like you said, like the iPhone cameras, the Ring cameras, the security cameras, the random people filming skies at night, it's all eventually going to come out. And I think the government is definitely cushioning the pad so that it's not a big shock for people. And they're kind of slowly normalizing and releasing. It's like, oh yeah, all those crazy conspiracy theorists and alien dudes, yeah, they were right. Here's the evidence. Here's the report.
Right.
And that's what kind of validates it all, really, because until you've either seen it with your own eyes or experienced it, or a government official or military person that has experienced it and like that has maybe told you about it or like leaked information about it or whatever, it's not going to be solidified until the government comes out and says, yeah, this is it. They're right. Here's the report,
Right. And Silent, honestly, just further pushing why it's such a great listen. Episode 2194. I totally suggest you listening to it because they also go into, because he's not allowed to suggest what he knows about what these entities are. He can talk about the phenomena surrounding them, the things that we have experienced or documented, but he can't go into what's been documented or proved about what they are. And he keeps that door open and he kind of exercises the muscle of thinking about it by suggesting, one, we know that they have likely been living among us. Your first thought goes to, lizards in skin suits walking amongst your city streets just like us. That isn't what he was suggesting. If 5% of the greatest mass of this earth, which is our oceans, is what we have actually known and researched, and beyond 95% of it is totally undocumented and unknown to us. When a lot of these aerospace military men have experienced tic-tac shaped objects jetting straight into the ocean, makes you wonder what else could be living among. He goes, there was a eureka moment in like the early 1900s when we were finally able to put a piece of glass in front of a tube and see microorganisms. The eureka, there's micro life. And I think they call them, mini beasts or something. And it's like, imagine there, and he goes into a whole conversation of how the sizes of organisms can really only experience a tier above and a tier below. They can't really go beyond that. You can't experience the universe, and you're in it, but you can't experience it. And it's one of those, what else is around us that has always been here that we're not able to understand and know? And I only kind of propose that because, as you suggested, Silent, we don't know what this could be. Clearly, there are people amongst us that do know, and it isn't their place to safeguard that. And there's a huge philosophical, theological conversation that is to be had about our existence that's being gate-kept. And again, as I feel disgruntled about that, we got to keep that on balance with, the military reasoning as presented by the interview, which is, if we were observing a potential threat, we wouldn't want them to know about us. The second they did, we'd have to completely intervene or we lost the element of surprise. So you could see a military aspect of like, don't let them know we know, or else they're going to just come in and vaporize us. So I don't know. Ricky, what are your thoughts?
With the thought of like, we just gotta like observe and see what's going on. I agree with him. We don't really need to know, like, protect us. We don't want to freak out. We're already freaking out about the stupidest shit in society nowadays.
So true.
So, like, we don't really need it on our plate, but we should know at least, like, okay, we're actually not the only species in the universe. Yeah, we don't need to know all the nitty gritty of what's going on behind the scenes. We don't need to know y'all plans, y'all strategy, or nothing. But if the mindset is, oh, we might let the cat out of the bag, and they're just coming after, they're rising out of the ocean. You know, there's like a million ships is rise out of the ocean. It's kind of crazy. I stand with them. But we want to know how all this shit started, where it's going, like, you know.
I respect it. David, what are your thoughts?
I have a few here. So I don't think anyone else is concerned about a active government agent speaking on the record about UFOs. That seems a little casual for
right.
for,
And it's
for
not
the
even
government.
like on the record. It's just like on an internet show.
Yeah. So it's like, that already just puts off a signal in my head here. Is like, is this a psyop? Is this possibly?
Have
Someone...
you caught a little bit of the rethink tank sneeze?
Well, I have to be the only one because everyone's just buying this hook, line, and sinker. I'm just going, this is a government employee just saying government documents. This is what I'm allowed to talk about. That seems a little odd, don't you think? So also, this isn't the first time Joe Rogan's had someone that claims they are from the government or even from the government and said, hey, this stuff's out there. But none of it's consistent. It's all different stuff. It's his description. It was like Alan Lazard. His description of things is a little bit different.
Dude, I got to tell you, you should listen to this podcast because he's never met Bob Lazar. But Bob Lazar comes up as a topic, and the way their stories totally weave together. Two folks, he goes, I never met him. I don't know him. I know of his, I know vaguely of his story.
But he didn't look into him.
And you could, and again, the way they seamlessly feed off of each other. The way, and again, we're doing a 3-hour conversation, a disservice, trying to boil it down to a 25-minute dialogue. But one of the more fascinating elements is how they're able to reinstill that confidence in you by displaying, by confronting those inquiries head on. Like, I wish I had more clips. Really, I wish I could just show you the whole podcast. If we could just do a reaction to the whole thing, it would do a better service than me trying to explain how, again, if my position was every inquiry is hit dead on, your position as you present here, the Bob Lazar point, the way he's able to say, okay, I can't talk about it totally, but here is how the government has been researching these in a compartmentalized fashion. It gives credit to a story, a scientist with a significant amount of accolades, whether fantastical or not. Somebody with significance, Bob Lazar, has dedicated to a fault his entire existence to this story, whether it's fantastical or not. Family, personal relationships, his entire existence has been committed to this story. And fascinatingly enough, a guy who could be a psyop totally works for the government and has all of the credit and background to display that. He is able to show or describe how scientists and other projects were able to dissect these technologies in a compartmentalized way and giving credit to the location and pursuit that Bob Lazar describes to a T.
I never find it too terrible. The problem is it's not incredibly consistent. It's just vague enough to be able to go, okay, maybe yeah. I can see the point. I can see point A, I can see point B, but it's never the whole thing. You can wrap this up pretty quickly if you just start spouting in detail what's going on, where are they at, what are they doing, show a little bit of video, show a little bit of photo, and all of a sudden this thing just cracks wide open. I don't think any of that actually exists. I think what we're currently seeing, let's just assume there is something otherworldly out there that our government has possession of. It's either so small that they can contain it, whatever it is, a piece of shit, doesn't matter. It's small enough that fits in a singular room, and you can limit access to 1 to 2 people a year and just kind of figure it out from there so it doesn't go off. But the way he's describing, as if we can't talk about these things being real or else they're going to attack us, and that's the whole strategy. Like, buddy, you're talking about it in real time on the most popular podcast in the world, and you don't think that might tip someone off? They're not.
But again, there's another indication that he presents as well. This isn't just a total display of fantastical objects that are a mystery to us. He reinstills that faith in United States technology, United States government, and its mechanisms by saying it in every word beyond saying it. Like, every word he could suggest without, like, again, he does a lawyer's job of getting as close to that line as possible without crossing it. But
Just like Fed speak.
Exactly. But there is a clear indication that we have this technology too. He cannot describe to what extent. But again, if Bob Lazar, a genius in the field, was dissecting this 50 years ago before an iPhone existed, we can certainly dissect this equipment significantly better than ever before. And it shouldn't be out of the realm of consideration that we also have this technology or have in some way gotten close to handling whatever, because clearly it's a new science. It's a totally new science. Like what was the garage door opener? They use the example of the garage door opener. He goes, if you showed a garage door opener to somebody 200 years ago, it is magic. It is a science beyond anything they could ever possibly comprehend. It would break and shatter and shift reality in a heartbeat. And also, it's so beyond their comprehension, you really couldn't teach it to them even if you wanted to try. There is a good chance that there is a scientific mechanism within our $100 billion military that they have accomplished that goal. And until Russia and China start flying this shit around too, they're just mastering it further in a desert in Mexico or a building underground in Colorado. But these things, dude, that Detroit, the Denver airport, what better place to have super planes than the greatest underground space airport ever? So again, I hear you, but it does the dialogue a disservice to not hear a minute of it, because truthfully, they flush all of that out. Like, there is no dry point in this 3 hours. It's incredibly dense, and it reinforces not only the mystery that flourishes around us, but also the very reality that we're wielding it to, or at least very close to wielding it at its fullest capacity.
I'm just not buying any of this, because it's part of this. Like, I want to believe there's little gray men hanging around New Mexico, Area 51, all having a good time, making some coffee for people. And they're just chill about the whole thing of only the United States having the power and the authority over the aliens. No other country seems to have any sort of this fanatical things going on, or at least none. Because you think
it could be them.
Well,
like, if we're saying it's in a combination of us and something we can't identify, one, they're not saying it's the stereotypical gray person. They're saying it's a mystery entity. It could be a germ. It could be again, there's imaginatory aspects to this reality that we wouldn't be able to comprehend if we aren't experiencing it. It comes back to every philosophical dissection ever. If a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? The reality is no, it doesn't make a sound, because it isn't experienced. It isn't a fabric of reality. So I'm just saying, don't limit yourself. if you approach it with the imagination that they are not telling us what it is, they're saying that there's something mysterious. So what if Putin rides into a UFO on a horse, and that UFO has the technology to shrink him and the horse to a COVID-sized little germ, and then it flies into your stomach like the magical school bus or whatever that. What was that book we read as a kid?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Magic School Bus.
Boom.
Yeah.
Boom. All right. So I'm just saying there's this becomes fantastical. This becomes theoretical. I respect that, but also acknowledge that your crux can't be, well, China would have it. Russia, it can't. Well, the hubris of it's just us. No. There's a suggestion that there's definitely something that isn't us. They think it's probably something fanatical, but it also could be a bunch of Chinese folk. We don't know. What do you got? What do you got?
He was talking about how people in Argentina were like experiencing this, and they've normalized this to the point where they talk about it, and whenever they talk to someone from the United States, they go, what don't you understand about this new information that has been given to you? Because it's already been normalized here. Like, yeah, we've known about aliens and we've been told about it, and remember that part?
Yeah, oh yeah. What are your thoughts?
But again, there's never any proof. There's never a documented picture of like Obama next to a UFO or some sort of just throw the proof out there. If this is such common knowledge across the entire country that you didn't know about this, well, okay, show me the picture. Show me the video.
All right, so let's start bringing this to a centralized dialogue here. All right, I appreciate that point. So one of the things that like I was going to bring up in my wrapping thoughts is David's call for just script it out. Show us. Like, you got an alien in a vat. Show it to us, and it's all over. And I want to rewind that all back to the first clip, which was this director within our government's explanation of why it isn't just, here's Joe Rogan going, what are they just playing with us? Like, why are they just cock teasing us? Why don't they just give it to us? And the excuse is, one, if they could continue to hide it, they probably would. They can't continue to hide it. The cat's out of the bag, so they're kind of moving with it with some resistance. The other reason of why, if you want me to know, David, they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know. But there is a faction within our government that finds it important for us to know. They are suggesting that we should know. And they're in combatants with probably old heads that have been there for a long time. I mean, how about this? There's a giant section within that podcast that talks about the culpability and legal liability for the folks within our government the day this is legitimate fabric of our reality. Why don't they just pull out the alien and shred it through town? Because a whole bunch of assholes that have a beach house are going to owe a lot of money for lives they've ruined and lies they've told. So they're kind of like, let us die first. So you've got a bunch of old heads that have an incentive in hiding this. You've got tradition that is incentivized in hiding this. There are case studies that show experienced tribes like, Brian's over there bringing up Argentina. There's this example of a tribe where 5,000 folks, there was an experience at night. And whether it was a space phenomenon or not, the government presented it as though they don't know what it is, and they do think it was some sort of phenomenon. 5,000 people that night killed themselves. Boom, right there. So it goes to show that while that's why you would want to slowly socialize people with movies and TV shows and books, because the mind of the masses is fragile. And so in addition to that, if their role is to make sure 5,000 people don't just turn off tonight, they got to figure out a way of warming it up to us without breaking the fabric of our society. So I don't know. I'll flip it to you, and then we'll get into our rapid thoughts.
I just don't think the government's. They're not that smart. They're also not that dumb to think this is just all right. We got this whole thing calculated out. The one piece you actually brought up, I probably believe the legal liability.
Oh,
if there's one thing that's undefeated,
That's
in
a
this world,
huge section of the podcast.
it is billable hours. That is the only entity that is undefeated in this country. So yeah, I'd buy that. I'd follow that, but what I'm not buying is an official government employee coming out and just kind of talking about it. 'Cause this isn't just a 2-minute section in a podcast when he's talking about something else. The whole point of this is to talk about aliens, and he's not being shy about it. Oh, I can't go into detail. Oh, I can't talk about this, but they're there. Who's they? Well, just put together the context, because I mean, what is it? What is this? Are we trying to? Or are we not? And yeah, we can dissect every sort of excuse, and I call them excuse of why we can't say it, because it's just. Are they just playing with us? Are they going, well, let's let them feed on the UFO thing for a little bit? That seemed to work last time we did it. And because I remember when that initial government report came out, and it was like Congress or something. They said, yep, there's things we don't understand that we've seen, and we don't really know what they are, and that's about as much information as we have. Okay, all right. In that format, I at least believed it to the point where we're not hubris enough to go, well, only the United States has authority over whatever this is, but also at the same time, we don't really know what's going on. So what's the hard evidence? We're not really sure. These are just reports, and we can't. They're hard to corroborate, but at the same time, we trust in the individuals that say it. And there's no like video, or maybe there's like that vague kind of like picture they had of like some sort of like black and white thing, and that at least I can get on board with. And that really just kind of a dud. Remember that we talked about that for about 24 hours, and that was about it. We're talking about Kamala Harris a lot more in the past like 2 weeks than we ever did on this UFO thing. It was supposed to just be the fucking bomb drop, but no. I wonder if society just really doesn't care as much as we hope they do.
Yeah,
and they just maybe move on. I don't know.
Brian, what do you got here for us? Then we're gonna dive into rapid thoughts.
I see this as like the tip of the iceberg, and we're on the Titanic, and they're just trying to avoid the inevitable, almost like Medusa with all of her snakes on the head, and she's like, the snake's like, oh wait, someone's talking about it over here, and then it's like, well, I'm gonna look too, and then it's like, hey, how many people are looking at this? Oh my God. Stone.
I like that. All right, rapid thoughts. We are blessed because it was a little late, so we couldn't introduce him. But Dougie Fresh, what do you got for us? Rapid thoughts.
So I like the point you brought up. Like, they're just trying to slowly put it out there through TV, movies, and all that. And I thought about that. I'm a big sci-fi guy, so like, there's so many different so many different TV shows where it's like, aliens are good and, we work with them and they help us. TV shows where it's like the whole computer age was because we found a crashed alien ship, and that's how we got the computers and the technology we have today. So they helped us, But then there's like what the Netflix 3-body problem or something like that, where it's like these aliens came and they're here to keep us from advancing past a certain point so that they can conquer us later on. So it's like, yeah, well, TV is like mostly pushes like, oh, aliens are good. We learn from them. They help us. But then there are like the other ones where it's just the opposite. Like aliens are here to kill us. Like Independence Day movies back in the day.
Right.
So it's like they're definitely pushing some sort of alien narrative. Problem is they're confusing everybody.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the purpose too, is to keep it smoke and mirrors and keep you in the vague. So that being said, Silent, what are your rapid thoughts?
I personally think it's not really going to matter whether they come out and say it in our generation or our lifetime or not, because I think by the time they come out with that information, everybody's going to be so busy and so occupied just trying to survive in this world that nobody's really going to care that much, to be honest. So
we're going to be living in like Mad Max world, and it'll be like the last thing we care about is aliens.
Right, exactly. And that's honestly my prediction, because as you said, there's probably like an old guard that's definitely keeping this under the wraps, even though they shouldn't be, some would argue. But then again, if they do come out and show everybody with evidence, like David said, like a picture or some sort of like photo of a president or something, like hard proof, hard evidence that, okay, yeah, there are aliens, yes, they do exist, here's the evidence. What's that gonna do? If you think about it, like for the average person, it's not really gonna do much. So that's why I think most people are not really gonna care once they do eventually come out and full on display, like, yep, there's aliens, here's the evidence.
No, I
Spread eagle.
Yeah. It's probe time, baby.
Yeah.
Ricky, what are your thoughts?
If it ain't in front of me, man, I ain't really worried about it, honestly.
That's true.
As Silent just said, there's a lot of shit going on in our personal life and just in the world in general. And we don't really, honestly, we don't really care enough what's really going on in the world. Like we may say we do, but we really don't if it's not in our backyard. So I don't got no aliens in front of me. I hope they chilling. I hope they ain't here to kill us. Come smoke one with your boy.
Hey. All right. Okay, for my rapid thoughts here, Brian, can you bring in this clip 3 here? I think this kind of wraps it up perfectly.
Sort of conversation being had in the government about what these things potentially are?
Not to my knowledge, and I sure hope not, because I don't think the government, this is a conversation, this is where I go back to, this is a conversation that involves a lot of people, whether it's your priest or your rabbi or your imam, or it is your philosophy teacher at the university. I think we're getting into an area now that is beyond national security. And I'm honestly, Joe, I'm not comfortable with my government taking that aspect on because, frankly, I don't trust my government to manage what I should think about something. Tell me what is, I'm okay with.
Right.
But don't tell me how to think about it. Don't tell me how to process that, because now you're overstepping your bounds.
I'm telling you, that to me is the crux of the point. I appreciate the role of the government. Truth is, government that's tapping in here because you're running just crazy rogue agencies, and I know you're listening to me. Truth is, you're not doing a good job at it, and I'm not the biggest fan of what you're doing. So I like the pursuit. It's a good goal. You're not achieving it. And in that role, we need to re-articulate what that is. Let's re-articulate what your role is. And one, it's to keep us secure and protected. As this conversation, this long and dense conversation continues to nod, I can respect the fact that there is diplomacy issues that need to be considered as you're trying to traverse this complicated conversation that completely changes our reality, takes reality as we know it, science as we know it, shifts it entirely. If you have a machine that isn't running on combustion and that is zipping through the air into the water and can like camouflage into transparency, that is a technology we don't have. So whatever it is utilizing would change our sciences entirely, just like the microwave changed heating up macaroni. So I suggest that because the strongest point presented throughout this whole conversation, as seen in this clip, is reminding what that role is, which is you present me the information. It is my role then to do with it as I will. I will make of it and dissect it and try to come to my own personal conclusions, but it isn't for you to interpret and conclude for me. And this is that gray area. They need to preserve this information for national security, but also this is theological, philosophical reality concerns that isn't the place of the government to police. And so where is that line? If I was a Supreme Court justice, I would have a very difficult time creating a standard in black letter law that I could articulate in English. In a statement sentence, this is the criteria at which point it exceeds your national security concern, and it is now the fabric of reality. This is godlike information. You're not allowed to gatekeep. What is that line? You know what? I got to get about 100 more years to get Ruth Bader Ginsburg genius to figure that out, right? She was like about 350 years old. I think I got a few hundred more years to get to that. But I'm not in the role to figure that out. But here is my role, is to create a dialogue and a conversation that clearly highlights and articulates the fact that this line, whatever that line is, does need to exist, because right now it doesn't, and we're just kind of leaving it to the powers that be to figure it out for us. They know what's good for us to know. No. We now know you cannot figure out what is good for us to know and what isn't. I mean, we're going to get into it with the Avengers conversation coming up here soon, but it's pretty awesome for Donald Trump to go, you know what? I want the guy whose dad and uncle was killed by the government to determine what information the government's allowed to hide now. And the government's like scrambling, like, dude, we told you the last time you can't tell people we killed the guy. Like that's what you're trying to hide. And you should see the reports that have come out the last week. You can't tell them. It's awesome to see the government finally creating mechanisms that are going, yeah, you know what? This isn't information because information is different than a nuke. You know what? You could be the gatekeeper for the nuke. I don't think all of us should kind of have access to that. You can, but information isn't weapons. Information isn't avenues, streets, highways, sewers. That's your role, baby cakes. And the information is for me and my chaps to dissect and come to our own conclusions. We'll rethink it and figure it out for ourselves. And you just present us with the information. I don't know. Rapid thoughts.
Well, I still think if there is anything extraterrestrial on this planet, it's incredibly small. Like it's like a rock or something. And it's like the size of like a ping pong table, and it's probably got some weird metal that we're able to transfix some things off of. Maybe we can copy it some way with our silicones and our polymers, and just try to kind of replicate some of the properties it has. I think that's about as far as it goes right now. Is there mathematically? I think there's absolutely there's UFOs, absolutely there's other intelligent life out there. Have they found us? Maybe. I don't know. They probably zipped around, went, all right, let's go somewhere else. But I'm still just not buying that they're here. We know about them, but we don't want to let them know we know about them. But we'll talk about it on the biggest podcast in the world that we know about them. And it just kind of this tease. I hate this kind of the tease. I'm going to just say just enough to make your imagination go wild without actually saying anything. It's like a very good like political speech. I'll say a bunch of stuff. I'll be kind of specific about some detail that doesn't really matter, but I won't go into any sort of detail you actually want to know. So
I love your point.
Yes.
And to re-emphasize the position I was presenting, I want to harp on what our dialogue has been cheated. Right? So we're dissecting this guy, an expert in the field. We are dissecting a 3-hour dialogue he presents, very dense. And the whole conversation is pretty much revolving around, do we believe it? Do we not? Is it a psyop? Like, imagine, like you said, just lay it out for me. You got an alien in a vat. Stop pretending and dancing around the bush. Show me the alien in the vat, and then we're beyond it. How sad is it that we have to spend the last 54 minutes, we're talking about, could there be an alien in the vat or not? Imagine what the dialogue about our reality, about God, about this universe, all people die. What happens then? What happens prior to us? What's life before us? What's life after us? These great mystical, philosophical inquiries that we don't even get to start because we're still trying to figure out even if there is an alien in the vat. So to me, it even further emphasizes what I was trying to present on what they are cheating us. And I truly believe there is no security risk that outweighs the very foundational reality to our existence. You don't get to play with that because now Imagine the day we find out we're on a flat thing in a dome that's been manipulated by aliens.
Oh,
Then
my.
what?
Oh.
You're going to say we've been like picking dingleberries off our hairy butts for the last 2,000 years? I'm not saying that's the case, but imagine if something so reality shifting was always our world and they played us for it or created this facade or fake reality. What did you cheat humanity and this experience by knowing that and gatekeeping it? And where do you get that self-righteous authority to think you can?
But I think we're at the point now, even if they do come out and say it, I think you're just kind of people who don't believe it. They get hook, line, sinker, just have every piece of information you could possibly want to know about this, and then just go, half the world probably go be like, I don't know, it looks like AI. Look at his fingers, it looks a little odd. It would just devolve into that conversation, even if it is real. And I think we're not quite as homogenous as we used to be in like the 80s,
Yeah, good point.
or like really a lot earlier, where a lot of our shared experiences through even media and pop culture are roughly the same. Well, now it's your experience with knowing the aliens exist and my experience the aliens don't exist probably are a little bit different from each other. And then the profound impact of that is also just going to be fractured and just going to keep going down these lines. When everyone has different experiences relative to the information we all receive, does that actually shatter the fabric of our society as much as it would have, 20, 30 years ago? I think we're at a point now where I don't know if we're mature enough to handle it, but we're definitely like, God, I don't know. I want to worry about this next election.
Yeah.
That's probably the thought of some folks. Like, I bet if the alien exist, he'd probably have stock options and he'd be able to pick and choose what, he gets all the insider information and there we go. He'd probably run for government, really.
That's a great point. Brian, rapid thoughts.
Well, we know that they would have housing and food.
I think they get a free cell phone and $2,000 in spending cash.
Yeah. So I think this is the whole like Schrodinger's cat. Like, if is the cat alive? Is it dead? We don't know until we open the box. And yeah. So I think that's the argument you were getting at. And I didn't know this, or it didn't really register until he said it in the podcast about the trust in the government and the spy laws in the 70s, how they had to implement that with spying on, U.S. citizens and how like they shouldn't be doing that. And they had to pass laws to prevent that from wasting all of our, what was it called? Intelligence. What is it? Specialized
Resources.
Intelligence.
Right.
Utilizing that on our own citizens.
Right. You can't use domestically the surveillance equipment.
Yeah.
So you can't domestically use it on our own citizens, and yet. But again,
And that's-
if you
that's
catch them
going with
breaking
the
the law,
trust.
you got to hide in Russia for the rest of your life. So
It's real.
That was all I got.
Try and catch me.
Yeah.
Catch me breaking my own laws. I dare you.
All right, this next topic is an interesting one. I have a lot to say about something that's just so remote and so, minute, but I think it has bigger social implications that I think we could talk about. So, this young boy is at a museum with his mom and pa and brother and sister. I think it's just another sibling. And he runs a little reckless at an art museum, pulls down a piece of art, and ends up costing his family $132,000 in debt. So here's this piece, this kid right here. He is playing on the art piece, loses control of it, crash.
Really took him with him.
Now mom finally comes back into the scene. So here's what's interesting. There's this whole news bit about, how the family's crippled now because it's cost them $132,000 and they're going to probably lose their house, and how we all need to feel bad for the financial situation they're in. But again, the mom had left the scene because she had this other crying. I mean, again, she's holding the kid, consoling it. My dad would have had my ass bruised.
Oh, I would have been beat. My mom would have been pissed I ruined an art piece.
Rock
My
bottom.
dad would have beat me for losing the money.
Yeah. So, I mean, this comes back to something that I've kind of felt about our society for a while now. And it's that we sit here and we say, like, Johnny, are you sure you want to do that? Like, we're trying to parent with politeness. And then we're wondering why we're left with this unruly monstrosity of a society. Nobody knows how to behave. Nobody knows how to respect authority and their elders. Everybody is just narcissists living in their own world. And we wonder what could have caused this. And it's because, one, there's never been a force that has compelled you to respect authority. If you're calling your dad Todd, already there's a step of authority that's removed that changes the whole dynamic. And you don't see the social implications before you find a bastard that has a rep sheet of robbing your local CVS market 10 times over, and they still won't ever comprehend what they're doing or why it's wrong. So I say all of that to kind of really present my opening point, which is, I could care less. And I truly love that. I hope in your box, because you don't have a house no more, that you are double thinking maybe one SWAT more would have been enough. And so when I sit here and go, did my mom and dad do much? Did my dad do too much? You know, maybe he did a little bit more than the friends around me. At the same time, he is a doctor and a lawyer as a kid, and what do you got? And so when I go, this is I've said this before on the podcast, and I truly need to emphasize, I really did think the natural experience of people was strangers coming up to kids and going, your kids are so well behaved. Because that happened to me and my sister every time we went to a restaurant. It was astonishing. People would come out of everywhere. Your kids are so well behaved. And I just thought that was the experience of going out. Turns out, no, we're just a significant anomaly. And you're all monsters. So I present that point because I think this is just the bed you made, lady, and you got to lay in it. And that bed just happens to be homelessness under the bridge. All right, what are your guys' thoughts?
All right. So first off, they're charging the family the full,
Damn straight.
full like retail.
Art is art. You
of
know what'd
what
be
this-
funny? If he then sold that broken piece as like extra art, and it's now like $250,000 because
It's
you
like,
squint and tilt
the
your head.
valuation of art's already garbage. It's like, okay, like
This piece of art is garbage. We don't talk about it enough. What is this? A body that's supposed to look like
that's
a disco ball? A disco ball body. You're telling me that's worth almost $200,000?
yeah, that's worth a house, and it's just not, and it's not gated off. It's not usually on very valuable pieces, like really rare stuff. They usually don't let someone touch them. In fact, they're actually very good about making sure you don't touch the actual valuable pieces.
It's almost like they wanted you to do. They're like, nobody's gonna pay for this, so
or like the insurance, like let's go on like what the art evaluation is. We'll see if they'll pay it. We'll see if the family pays this and see if they get suckered in. So look right next to the other piece of art. There's a barrier next to the actual other art thing. Like they didn't think that one was worth it.
But what's funny is even looking at that barrier, it doesn't go. It's one side of the art piece. Like that kid could literally just go around to the other side.
They're not really trying too hard. Like what happens if you just bump in, like you trip or fall or something? You bump like, oh geez, well I guess it's 130. If anything, that is planted for some sucker to be like, well, we got the insurance bill. We'll just throw this right out here. So
So let me propose an inquiry to the room then. If I wanted to create a museum, and the museum was, what's something that's like stereotypically fragile?
like glass.
Crystal.
What,
Okay.
what's the egg? Fabergé egg museum.
Oh, the
Boom.
Fabergé Museum.
Boom. All right, you come to my Fabergé egg museum, and what makes it so fascinating is that I got eggs everywhere. Like part of this comes back to the contracts that you make when you buy an Indians game ticket or a Browns game ticket. Like the ticket itself is a contract. So there is an agreement of like, no matter how much fragile shit I stack up and surround you with, you're signing to be liable for anything that breaks in here. And you're like, I'm not even reading the back of the ticket. I will pay $12.99 to keep these rugrats entertained and off my ass for 2 hours. And probably like my annoying ass cousin, they're the type of modern day parent that's just like, I have kids and there's people around now and I need a break from parenting because this damn decision I made in the middle of the night 9 months ago is exhausting and I need a break from it. So then they just expect the people around to parent their kid for them. And so I imagine she blindly buys this ticket. She doesn't know what the contractual agreement is. We never do. It's just take my kid for 2 hours. I need a freaking break. And then she lost sight of him, couldn't control him, didn't ingrain manners in them enough to where, guess what? Like, you ever see the videos of like a Spirit Halloween store and then like 90% of the comments are, this is why none of the animatronics work. And it's because some like hood dude just like knocks the machine or like some kid just like breaks it in half. And you're like, yeah, that's why none of that shit works. But also Spirit Halloween isn't coming after people to buy them. So what I'm getting at is, you know, the limitations of what you're signing up for. And at the point at which you break a Spirit Halloween animatronic, you wouldn't be surprised if you were forced to buy that. I only bring that up because I genuinely couldn't imagine a world where it's not even, oh man, dude, in the shower today, there was a clip I wanted to have ready for this. And I'm at work like, what was that clip? I couldn't remember to save my life. This was it. Kanye West, there's a like iconic video of Kanye going on one of his philosophical rants about how we socially break people and children. And he goes, your kid jumps on the coffee table. You go, get off that coffee table. And he's like, there's nobody saying they can't be on that coffee table besides society. And we confine our mentality and we like limit ourselves. And it's like, yeah, but dude, that's also the symptom of being a part of a community and a society that needs to survive with millions of people. Like, we need to figure out how to interact. If that means socially limiting your brain enough to where you're not climbing on a coffee table, oopsie daisy whoopsie, that's kind of the cost of what we're signing up for. So I only say that because Kanye would make the argument that my parents broke us and limited our imagination, and the confines of our mind are limited because there wasn't a world I could even comprehend us thinking about touching the clown animatronic at Spirit Halloween. Like, it didn't exist in my realm. And Kanye would say that is a poor symptom of my parents socially breaking us, and it limits our mentality. I think there's value in that. And when I've seen Kanye say that point in the past, I thought there was credence to it. But it isn't a universal law. It isn't something universally applied because there's truths to, listen, you need to be on the right side of the road. Like, it doesn't matter how bad Kanye makes you want to go on the left. You can't. You're not allowed. I told you you're not allowed. So to me, there's a balance there. I like the fun, philosophical, theoretical dialogue his point presents, but we also need to acknowledge that, but there are necessary reasons for those limitations.
I think we're also making the assumption that this parents were just awful and didn't actually parent the kids, not do that. But also, have you seen kids
he's definitely got his ass beat now.
Have you seen kids interact? They kind of just do stupid things. They get, a little boy just
Tide Pod challenge is pretty dumb.
Yeah, way overstimulated. He's got a bunch of energy. He's going someplace like brand new, and all of a sudden I just got to touch everything. Regardless, no matter how many times that kid maybe got slapped in the ass for like, hey,
I disagree.
Don't.
I disagree.
I don't.
As somebody with a significant toll of ass slaps in the book, I tell you, that shit works. It works. Hold on.
All right,
Your point has value. if anybody in this dialogue, or you can bring up an example of a person with a high toll of ass slaps and still is a monster at the museum or at a restaurant.
I'm sure there is. I'm sure they're out there.
I'm sure there. You don't have an example.
There's
I have a list of
300 million
examples.
people in the United States, and there's not one person who just had infinite amount of ass slappings, and like, well, I'm still gonna be a piece of shit. How many times can someone go to jail for stealing a Kia and then just get let go?
Okay, but now we're going down a different road. Like enough trauma. But hold on. Boom. Okay, not to go too metaphysical in this philosophical conversation, but the truth is, dude, that if anything speaks to that there is a delicate balance here. Something I'm not advocating for is the Adrian Peterson grab a switch off the tree and beat your kid bloody, right? So like there's a balance here. And if that excessive force is exactly that descriptive word, which is excessive. It isn't well-balanced and healthy force. It's excessive force. You are going to create trauma. You are going to create adverse results. So the truth is, you're not allowed. That actually, your example you need to lean on is not one within the realm that I'm trying to present. The drunk father that beats his kid beyond a healthy point. Like, it may have been that my dad kind of got to the gray area, maybe did it a little too many times, but what we can say by the results is he never crossed that line. And it's a gray area. He may have been able to do it a little bit less. He could have probably gotten away with a little bit more. But at the same time, in this little realm of where he did and didn't do it, it worked. It worked. So at the point at which you're getting that adverse result where you beat your kid senseless with a tree stick and now he's a monster.
That's called a switch.
Yes, I used that word earlier.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. But at the point at which it exceeds that point, you are now the example that furthers my point, that you could go beyond the balance and you do too much, and now it's the adverse result. Now you've got a monster that, like you said, has a rep sheet that's a constant professional criminal.
But I think we're just making the assumption that this kid is just a piece of shit regardless. And
no, he's not a piece of shit. He's a brat. He's a brat that didn't get slapped.
Does one bad time make for a brat?
Oh yeah,
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. So we go on results. So you use your very eloquent example of yourself. You did not turn out as bad or knocking over a priceless pieces of art. But also the kid's not done growing up either. I don't think we know the age of the kid from the story. Maybe he's like 4 or like 5. I don't know. But this isn't. Oh man, you make one mistake, next thing you know, oh Jesus Christ! Now he gets 2 idiots here on the internet just dragging this kid through the mud. The parents as well. I just don't. I'm not buying that there's this perfect Goldilocks zone that works for every single child and every single parent. And I think there is times where kids just you can't control them. They just kind of just do. They just kind of do things, and you can't expect it. And I think this mom had 2 different children, so I'm now trying to find this one runs off, because children run off all the time. Happens constantly. Go to Disney World, go to Universal, and you're like, hey, there's some kid over here, or is this mom, this guy? You hear it all the time. Cedar Point, it happens constantly. So and is that a result of bad parenting? I don't think so. It can be. I mean, it's not unreasonable to say you could have been parented poorly, and then he's just off the rails doing that. But also at the same time, we're looking at one just bad day for this family. It's a bad day for this family.
Ryan, what do you got?
And so I'm going on the side of, what about the museum? Who's appraising this for $132,000?
I agree.
And if you have something that valuable, where's the security?
Why is it protected better?
I saw this
prank sign.
I saw this video of a prank. They hired this security guard off Craigslist, and this dude came up and he was like, and he shoved the guy that he was supposed to be protecting, and then the security guard that was hired off of Craigslist just came in and just took him out, and it was I don't know. You can find people for a pretty cheap price that'll take kids out, I'm sure of it.
I don't know. What else are you thinking?
Well, on the topic here of like how this museum just goes and appraises things, and I think there's probably some lawyer out there probably looking at going, did they do enough to actually prevent this from being messed with?
Yes, right.
Yes, you have the social contract, but to charge, because it seems a little unreasonable to charge $132,000 for a statue that we never really got a clear picture of this.
Dude,
was
a
broken
Hunter
or not.
Biden painting is like 5 times that.
Yeah, so this is all a racket to begin with, and who's essentially we'll just bill it, we'll let them deal with it. 'Cause it was the insurance company that did do that, so maybe they're thinking they can get a quick $1 or $2 and they'll just settle. Hey, a couple grand. The artist is happy. They never went into detail exactly what this was or showed the result of this. By the video, it wasn't shattered in pieces. It probably is not what its intended use was going to be, obviously, but it's not 130. I find that just asinine. And like couple grand. Okay, well, shit. Fuck, this sucks. But we're just going way above and beyond. I think they just think they can get away with it.
Right. This wasn't even the cost of a car. We're not talking like 30, 40,000. This is a house. I don't know. Silent, what do you got for us? What are you thinking?
Yeah, that museum definitely failed to secure that piece if it was actually worth that much. And it definitely seems like they're trying to just get a fast one on this mom. That's really what it is. Now, is she the best mom? Probably not, because, you really should not be leaving your kids wandering around anywhere, except maybe a park, or like the beach.
She's
maybe
not
where you
even
can
in
keep
frame,
an eye on them.
Silent.
That's what I mean, right? Like at least somewhere where you still have eyesight of your kids, or somewhere where it's wide and the kid can actually run around without hurting anybody or himself, where he has the space, like I said, like a park or a beach or something. Not a
Things
museum
you can actually climb
that's
on.
surrounded. Yeah, right. Exactly. Like not a
Or
museum
an
that's
interactive
surrounded with.
museum.
Right.
Yeah, an
Cosi.
interactive museum.
God, Kosai
Exactly.
would get all the energy out of that
Yes.
kid. And
There's a lot of
damage
those
nothing.
museums. I've actually been to one where it's like, they project lights on the floor and you can like interact with it and everything moves, and it's a lot of fun. And if you bring kids there, I'm sure they could be running around all over the light rooms and things like that. But yeah, that art is probably not worth what they're saying it's worth. Clearly not.
Way.
And they're obviously just trying to pull a fast one on the mom here. That's the case, I would say.
The sad part is your point has a lot of weight. The reality is, though, even for them to prove it's not 132,000, we really owe you X, it's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars just to legally fight and prove
To get
the
a
value.
new appraisal of it. That's going to
That's
cost
right.
a lot of money.
What were your thoughts before we go to Ricky?
Well, my thought is, first of all, insurance. That has to be insured. So the fact that they're making this family pay is absurd because insurance covers that.
Well, no, their life insurance cover it?
Well, like think about it. Museums pay so much money for these things. There's no way they're not insured. Like they insure their whole
but
museum.
here's like David's saying, the museum will pay the artist that 132,000. Then they will go after the parents to pay them.
Yeah.
Usually the museum either has
They
the
don't
piece
just
on
cover it.
on loan, and they are insuring it with their insurance plan for the
Right.
museum, or they own it and it's still going to be insured.
But just think of it like your car insurance. Whether you own it, you lease it, whatever. If you hit me, my insurance company is going to pay me to make my living situation whole. Then they are going to pay their attorneys and go after you for whatever amount they gave me to make themselves whole, because somebody needs to pay and it isn't them.
Well,
I pay them to take care of it.
my other thing is too, most of these museums are government subsidized. So how are they going to go after a person who bought a ticket and pays taxes for the museum? Like we pay taxes towards these museums
Well,
in
Not
our
the
area.
whether
museum
it's
going after the
private or
parent,
public.
it's the insurance company
Still,
that's going after the parent.
and even then,
a private museum that had to buy all of it, subsidize everything themselves, no tax funding, I'd understand that more. But if this is a government subsidized in some way museum, I'm actually appalled that they're going after them for that much.
Again, if you go to Mount Rushmore and you chip George Washington's nose,
Well, there's a reason they
that's a
don't let you
public-
up there.
That's a public.
There's a reason they don't let you up there. Why are they letting a kid around the museum at all then?
Yes, but theoretically speaking, if you went to this public monument and you chipped Washington's nose, they would sue you, whether they're a public or private entity or experience.
And it's probably really it's the insurance company.
That's a
The
felony
third-
too, by the way.
Third party.
That would also be a
I did not
felony.
know
Yeah.
that in any way.
Well, my last point too. I despised going to the museum as a kid. My mom was all about going.
And Doug was just grabbing
there it
anything
is.
he
I
could.
blame the mom for bringing that young kid to a museum. Put the kid outside. Get the kid in a damn sport. He shouldn't be stuck in a museum on a weekend, damn it.
Ricky, what are your thoughts?
Yo, that's why Doug is a national treasure, bro. Listen, that kid did not want to go see any of those art pieces in that museum. He doesn't even know who these artists are. As Silent said, there are Lego museum, there are interactive museum for kids. What's the kid doing there? And second, you left the kid alone. And there's a bunch of sharp, not even for the museum. There's a bunch of sharp. You know what might happen to your child. There's a bunch of predators out here. Come on now, you're a bad mom. Put some belt to ass. Put some belt to ass. Another point. There's another kid looking at the kid like, "What the are you doing?"
Yeah,
Like, there is a contrast
That
of
was parented.
exactly a disciplined kid and an undisciplined kid. You can't tell me as a parent you're not liable for that.
The other kid's like, oh.
You like
Oh.
that don't even make sense. You learn as a kid, keep your hands to yourself. Don't touch random shit. Like, what? It doesn't even make sense. This is the privileged society. Oh, we don't want to pay for this. Oh, my kid is being a kid. No, put ass to
I agree,
belt
Ricky.
again. You feel me?
I
Because
agree entirely.
it doesn't make sense. If my dad bring me out anywhere, I'm supposed to behave myself because I'm a representation of my parents. And if I'm not a good representation when I get back home, ask the belt. You know what I mean? It's just the math thing. This is a first world problem. This shit won't happen in Jamaica. This is another first world problem. This won't happen. Even David said earlier, the Kia boys. The Kia boys are like a father. Their mom's trying to do single mom homes, trying to do what a dad's supposed to, like a father. You know what I mean? They're trying. He has some strong moms out here, but that mom, you notice the husband ain't even there. Come on now. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's something there. That kid, they're doing an interview in their kitchen. He's in the Ninja Turtle. That's a badass kid. And if you don't get in line, he's gonna be one of the Kia boys. So you gotta get in check early. You gotta get in check early because it don't make sense. You're gonna try to blame the museum and play the sympathy card of like, oh, my kid. Put belt to ass and your kid won't do this shit. When they go out there, stand, mommy, can I go look over here? Mom, they'll ask permission to do stuff. When he becomes a teenager, he's just gonna do what he wants. The math ain't mathing. Belt to ass. But you know,
God,
you
I
guys
love
said
that
it
you brought
earlier.
the point back to that.
Don't overdo it.
Yeah.
Like, I had overdoing ass whoopings. Don't overdo it. But there's a way to discipline a kid. Like, take away his first world problems.
Hey, I'm just gonna
Belt
say
to
it.
ass.
I'm just gonna say it. What did Ricky's point highlight for me? That I think the extent at which the farmers that which raised David, the farthest they ever took him was maybe like a Staples, so he could climb on some cardboard boxes. Because clearly there was no belt to ass in this corner. Because I am telling you, there is no world I could fathom this being like it's just kids being kids. No. When I was a well-behaved child and my parents took me to the park, as Silence suggests, or Legoland, as Silence or as Ricky suggests, or what did Doug say? I don't know. A pond.
Play a
let's say.
sport. Get
There
him
you
outside.
go. Sports. All of the above. I was the disciplined golden retriever or a German shepherd. I sat there at attention. But the second the leash came off and I was in the dog park, bitch, you knew I knew how to have fun. So I was militant, sitting up straight, and I knew what the dog park was, and I knew what the classroom was where I had to sit at attention. So I just can never agree with your point with that. Well, you know, it's not. I'm not. You said it's a couple of kids on the internet dragging this poor kid. I am in no way dragging this kid. the symptom of the character that will be developed by his parenting, his misbehaving personality, none of that is his fault. All of that is the result of his shitty parents. But we've had this conversation before on the podcast. At some point, is it 18? Is it 25? Is it 30? No matter how much it is the parent's fault, at some point that kid's going to have to be accountable. These terrible characteristics, whether it's narcissism or whatever's embedded in him, that he doesn't get to just write it off at 45. Well, it's my mom's fault. No, at some point you need to become self-aware, and all of those issues you do need to work on. Society doesn't give you the pass. So for me, I can have affection for, it's sad that we have the nature of kids. They show up to a classroom displaying the nature of kids, and our solve for that is Ritalin. Pump the bitch full of medication. I don't love that. And so I'm never going to say numb them till they're zombies. But I also am going to say there is an important societal balance that you also can't have monkeys swinging from the rafters. So I got to keep you off the ceiling, and I'm not trying to have you drooling on yourself. And a healthy balance with the belt kind of finds me somewhere in the middle. I don't know. Doug, what do you got?
So I did some Google searches and artificial intelligence searches. Gotta love AI. Museums, most major museums will use the institutional art insurance. It provides coverage for art collections owned by institutions or entrusted them by private art collectors. Institutional art insurance can cover many risks such as theft, damage, and loss. It can also cover damages caused during exhibitions, loans, or transit.
So who is it paying? So there is a broken item. What is it saying it's covering? It's paying, I'm assuming, the artist that lost.
Just says that the museum will insure the art.
She should be all right.
Money back.
And then they got to go collect on
Look,
it.
all
That's how
right,
insurance
You pay for your insurance hoping nothing ever happens. It's the biggest lottery in America.
I would say, I hope she don't have to pay.
He gets the front part, but I don't think he gets the back half.
Yeah.
Of insurance.
Okay. You bought a ticket to the show. Like another one of the two was saying that when you purchase a ticket or you get a ticket to go to the museum, you are invited into that facility, and they are assuming risk and assuming also that they have taken reasonable precautions to protect their art. Things could happen. Things could still get broken, but part of that insurance is you are inviting these people in. You assume the risk of anything that might happen, which is why you buy the insurance. So reading that too, it's like if they went there and bought their ticket, I don't know.
He's discovering how insurance works. I'm glad. We are.
I'll just say,
maybe not on the internet, but definitely in this
You got to
room.
think of it in the car scenario.
but
I own a car, right? You break my car. Insurance has it covered. Who's getting that money? Me, because I have the loss of property. But the insurance relationship doesn't end there.
I just
Then
find it hard to
insurance
believe they're
goes
going to
after
go
you.
for the full value of the painting to the full 132.
We are. I think everyone's in agreement
You mentioned
here.
that, like I
Yeah,
just
they're
knowing
pulling
that
a
they
fast
are
one on
going to
this
get some
lady.
money, I can't
Yeah.
believe they're truly going to go.
that's what I'm
after
saying.
the full amount.
Like, if the thing is worth $1 million and 132 is the deductible, you gotta pay the deductible. I understand.
I love Ricky's point.
I understand, but if that's not the deductible, that's crazy though.
Hold on, Brian, can you do me the favor one last time? Bring on the screen and pause the art. Okay? Let's emphasize what this is.
And yo, maybe it's the titties, yo.
Original.
He saw them titties. He saw the titties.
Yeah, his mouthful.
He wanted someone to titties.
Tatas.
That's all.
Yes,
That's all.
yeah. He's like
That is
heavy.
exactly what he went for. Oh my God.
He's getting a face full.
He trying to get them heavies.
Okay, so we got a kid discovering nature for the first time. Cut him a break.
Yeah,
I mean, isn't that what art is for? For you to discover the artwork's meaning to you? Like, come on.
It made an impact on him.
I will never forget that museum experience.
But
A six-figure impact,
Okay,
yeah.
the greater dialogue here is there is 0 worlds where that is worth 132,000. Like
It's shiny.
It's
it's shiny. The vague the vagueness of artistic value always comes down to what people are willing to pay for it. And unless it is a money embezzling business, you are not finding a person that finds $132,000 of value in that.
Not in any reasonable world, especially. And if you do think it's worth $132,000, you're probably going to protect it maybe a little bit more than. I'm surprised the insurance company isn't going after the museums. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
You just let this out there.
That didn't look like they took reasonable measures to protect
agree.
the artwork.
I agree.
And that was one of the insurance things.
Totally.
Now, I
And
think
why we don't have a close up of this like art piece, like of the art piece itself? Like,
Yeah.
what
the
is this
other
art
thing,
piece?
don't-
What is it? Is it stone? Is it glass? What is it?
because it doesn't, maybe metal, I don't know, or plaster. It might even be plaster because it doesn't. It's not falling with like a tremendous thud.
If it was like metal, it would have probably thudded
Yeah,
just
so
a
it's-
little heavier.
Hold on.
Doesn't it bounce?
And if it was marble, he would have been
Right.
crushed.
This is where lawyers get involved. But if it can be rebuilt,
Yeah, maybe. it's
then
heavy.
what the most you could sue for is the material cost and the hourly cost to get the product
The
whole. And it's
reconstruction,
not
yeah.
to say that you actually have to rebuild it, but that is the value at which I owe you. I don't need to replace the thing in its entirety and buy a whole new glistening woman. All I need to do is make you whole. And whatever that value is what I should be paying. If that's there's no world, it's $132,000 if that's what it is.
No way.
Okay, let's wrap this bad boy up. So, Ricky, you're up there. You're ready. Wrap it up for us. What do you think?
Man, if this is some marble from the ancient days, Roman days, I understand. You know what I mean? You can't get that marble back. But ask the belt, get the ask the belt, because it doesn't make sense. You're going on the news. You had to email the news and get them come to your house, and your kid was still acting like an idiot in the kitchen. You know what I mean? You just hide his face with a Ninja Turtle mask. Like, where's the dad? If this was really an issue, the dad would have came out like, man, I work hard. Like, you know, I don't deserve this. He made a simple mistake. But the mom, ask the belt. You have too much sympathy on the kid. If you don't stop him now in his tracks, he's going to be a Kia boy. And from a Kia boy to death row. So stop it in the tracks. You know, it's crazy. And the museum is robbery. Like, let's see the artwork. Let's know what material it is. Let's see what the piece is. Y'all didn't show for some reason. And that's sneaky to me. That's very suspicious. But, you know, it's $132,000 is crazy. Give her a $10,000 deductible charge or some shit.
Right.
That's why it's insurance.
And I just want to highlight one last point from Ricky's position. He's the only one to have touched upon this point twice now. And it's a small point, but I think he raises it continuously because it is telling. There is no fatherly figure anywhere in this situation. He isn't in the picture, literally in the frame, but also he isn't even in the interview. So the news article that follows it, there's no bleeding heart father that's out here saying, you know, this is my wife was taking care of my kids. I was out of blah, 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 blah. The mystery of the absence is the most telling piece. Silent, rapid thoughts.
Yeah, it is your job as a parent to teach your kids that there is a time and place where they can run around and exert all of their excessive energy, and a closed, small museum surrounded by hundreds of thousands of dollars, allegedly, worth of art is not it. And it is your job as a mom to teach your kids that.
I can
Very
appreciate
simple.
that. Yeah.
Are the insurance trying to pull a fast one? Obviously, of course. Because, like you said, the news piece didn't even get some B-roll footage of like the broken statue, or like zoom in, show us the material, show us why it's worth 132,000 plus, you know? So yeah, this lady definitely needs to lawyer up very fast. Otherwise, she is going to have to be paying that bill probably for the rest of her life.
Great point.
Hey, no
Great point.
college. That's the kid's college fund right there. So
Yeah,
that
right
does
there,
pull him down.
exactly.
And, you know what I'm saying?
Doug, did you have a wrapping thought?
No. I read
No?
the thoughts for my
He's-
thoughts. I already wrapped.
Well, who's going to give us another insurance lesson?
So David harps, you know, we can't just be out here dragging a poor kid. And I want to then further articulate my position in no way is a reflection on the kid. Down the line, the symptoms that come from poor parenting, this kid will have to be held accountable to that. But right now, it's but for, right? So this is a stress factor in determining fault and liability in like neglect cases. So, but for this action, this result would not have occurred. So, but for the mother's parenting, the kid is not a misbehaved child. Nature versus nurture. That's what we're experiencing. Mom, why don't I have a college fund? Well, honey, when you were 5, I love that. But at the same time, is it the kid's fault he doesn't have a college fund? Like, again, even now, let's comment really hammers. The kid really doesn't know what he's doing. It's your responsibility to embed into him that he knows what he's doing. This kind of, we did a great job of avoiding these types of sensitive subjects. But one of the things I want to emphasize is when we have conversations about like police interactions with Black folk, one of the things that I say all the time is it's definitely part of it is what you're training your kids. Like, I didn't come into this world knowing how to interact with a cop. And if you tell them fight for your life, well, when they start fighting for their life and it results in force that otherwise wouldn't be there, there's a conversation to be had there. I only bring this position up because the crux of that point is I didn't know what a cop was. Somebody needed to teach me. That was the role of my parents. And some parents put them in a different light than other parents. This is the same thing. Your role as the parent is to embed into this child what behavior in a museum is like. Whether that comes at 2 years old, well, they can't really walk. At 3 years old, okay, 4 or 5. I don't know where it is on that sliding scale because we all have different capacities. If you have a 24-year-old child that has the brain capacity of a 7-year-old because he has Down syndrome, like, you're going to be limited in what you're able to accomplish there. And I respect that. So it's a sliding scale. I can't point at needs to know how to be in a museum at 5 because we're all different. But also, that comes down to if you do have a Down syndrome child that's 16 years old that has the capacity of a 5-year-old, well, then guess what? Even at 16 years old, you're holding his hand through the museum. There is a different behavioral approach depending on the capacity of your kid. So if your capacity of your kid, if you raised a couple of Gergats and you've got 10-year-old, 45-year-old kids, then yeah, you could probably leave them at the bench and safely know they're not going to tear down the statue. But if you've got a 20-year-old with the capacity and behavioral approach of a 7-year-old, it's your responsibility to know that they can't be left on that bench alone, that it's you who needs to hold their hand, that it takes extra intervention and oversight to ensure that you don't lose the mortgage. Yoo-hoo. So, David, that's my position on it. And like David Bricky, that guy over there on the couch, Doug said, it probably just isn't a place for kids. Rapping thoughts.
It's probably not a place for kids, especially the unguarded. But sometimes you just don't always know that. If that's your first time at the museum, you're thinking, it's a local museum. How bad could it be? And it could probably be pretty bad. But I don't want to sit here and subscribe to the notion that parenting should be perfection. I just don't see that there's things that just go wrong all the time.
It isn't perfection. It isn't. My parents weren't perfect. Your parents weren't perfect. This whole room's parents were not perfect. But it's a game of averages. And the goal is that you're good enough that all 7 of us with totally different parental approaches can still socially interact and live amongst each other in the game of averages to where, it's the Venn diagram. I've got the big circle. You've got the big circle. We live in that overlap. And the goal of our parents in this game of averages is just to be good enough to where you're not an anomaly that's living in a concrete box in jail or needs to be medicated because you're mentally unfit. We just need to get you good enough to where even if we're all on different wavelengths and different capacities, we can all still live amongst each other and enjoy each other's presence without any of us being a problem to each other.
But I'm not buying the notion that you can't have an outlier. You just can't have a bad situation. Just, Jesus, I had to go do something else. Next thing you know, the kid runs off. I mean, this is all just reasonable things. If you've seen children interact, they just do things. They go out. They're like wild animals sometimes. You can't always contain them 100% of the time in every scenario. And this, I don't want to sit here and just know like, well, you're a bad parent because your kid just one time ran off and now thought they wanted to climb and get his face in the center of some jugs there. What's like
No, now let beat you. Now let beat you with the point that the first rule of parents is to give your kids the don't touch anything rule, and then follow that up with, if you break it, you buy it. I mean, it comes down to like your kid steals a candy bar. Did they rob ExxonMobil? No. This was not $1 billion heist. They made it out with a $2.50 Snickers because even the Snickers company is robbing us. It's not even $1 anymore. But again, at most, your kid made out with a $2.50 bandit heist, okay? That is a teachable moment so it doesn't cost your kid 30 years of time or like I mean in a jail sentence or a rap sheet that makes them a professional criminal and destroys their livelihood. It starts at the Snickers bar, and if it doesn't stop at the Snickers bar, then stealing a couple towels isn't a big deal. Well, do you know how many dollars I've cost myself just, I don't know, having principles? Like, I could have stolen this pop at the Indians game, but on principle, I, one, spiritually have a respect for the karmic fabric of this world, and I just don't want to play with that power. But also, in a world where that's just my fantastical imagination, I just got a moral compass that makes me better than you.
Yeah, I don't think the 6-year-olds really got the moral compass about, well, do I not climb on
but
this
the
thing
moral
that looks...
compass starts at the Snickers bar.
Yeah, but okay, so you let's say we all get one Snickers bar. This just so happened to be his Snickers bar. Like,
It happened to be a life-size Snicker bar moment.
It was just this. Well, I'm gonna go climb this. Like, children are dumb. They are absolutely dumb because we have to teach them things. Even despite your best efforts, you can teach, and then all of a sudden they just see a shiny set of tits at a museum and go, I need to dump my face right in the middle of that.
Let me ask you
That's a
something.
great
Let me ask you
point.
something, because I think this will bring a bonding moment between the two of us.
Oh, okay.
If I had a gold-plated $2,000 iPad and your kid is standing at the pier watching you fish, if I handed him the iPad to take a picture of me and it falls over the edge, is it the kid's fault? We'd agree probably not. You're the moron that gave him a $2,000 gold-plated iPad,
I agree
right?
with that.
We would agree upon that. Yeah. So again, this comes back to, but Mom, you gave him the $132,000 statue to break. You've created a scenario, like again, if you're at Gym World and you're surrounded by spongy balls and things to climb on, you're really not creating a scenario where the gold-plated iPad falls in the pond. But you've created the situation where, yes, this is just that kid's Snicker bar learning situation, but you've created the magnitude of $132,000. Not the kid, not the museum, but somebody. So let's say, okay, one of the things we keep talking about is it probably isn't worth $132,000. But whatever it is worth, can we also agree somebody's got to pay for it, and it isn't the artist? The artist didn't put it in such a way that it's inviting you to grab the knockers. You grab the knockers. So at what point is it, I'm not responsible, I'm the artist. Somebody here is. We want to sit here and all agree that it really isn't the kid morally or literally. So it's got to be the parent. It's not the museum's fault. Could they have done a better job? Man, if we were in a law school class, we could have a really fun time breaking down the lengths at which they failed to prevent this from happening. And it makes it probably less of a pay tag. Like you don't get nothing. You just don't get as much as you otherwise would have. So that'll be the curious piece. It comes back to the but for your lack of security, this wouldn't have happened. So this is something that would be dissected in a courtroom, but I just want to make the point that it doesn't close the door to it because of that.
Yeah, and ultimately the parent is responsible. The child just can't. They're not of legal age to be responsible really for anything. But there is the parent to be ultimately 100% all the time must just follow this. I just don't. I just live in it. I just live in it. I think of it a little bit differently than that, where there is opportunities. These things just happen, and you just can't control it despite your best efforts. Because I'm pretty sure the mom's going, geez, let's just assume she's not telling the child to go wild. We don't care. We're good. Let's assume like something happened. There's just a scenario, and we can all create this magical scenario in our head. But it just didn't. Just because you're not always with the child doesn't mean the child doesn't have an opportunity just to bolt and go. This is fun. I'm going to run away, despite your best efforts too.
But that all being said, you are legally required to never lose track of your kid.
Well, I agree.
That is one legal requirement.
Yep. But it's one of those weird things where the kid sometimes just tries to disappear himself.
Oh yeah.
The kid's running away, or like, oh, well, come chase me, or do whatever. There's all sorts of scenarios in which the kid's just leaving and thinking it's a good time, and the parent is, Jesus Christ, it's like he's gone again. It happens. It happens all the time. All this, with our combined experience of parenting. I think we
Dude,
can all
I'm
assume-
seeing more and more kids with the leashes on them.
Oh yeah.
More and more.
It's instead of parenting them and having to swallow the pill of a potential backhand, I'm just going to tie them up like a dog.
Well, we might get another Harambe, so we don't want that.
Bingo! Oh my God. Harambe is only a worldwide name because of shitty parenting. Literally, there is a dead gorilla because of shitty parenting. Brian, wrapping thoughts.
I think he did do it on purpose. It was very malicious. He didn't get that candy bar on. He saw vulnerability in mom. He was like, you didn't give me that candy bar in the car on the ride over. And
now you're losing your bedroom, mom.
You're done.
I'm going for the most expensive item in there. I'm gonna ruin your life, mom. I think that's where you went. I think that's what happened.
I think you're 100% right. I think you're 100% right. All right. To the last and final topic. This is an interesting one, but how exciting is it that the Don himself is assembling the Avengers? He's out here bringing the crew together.
I hear you have an unusual problem. You should talk. You should listen. What if I told you we were putting a team together? Who's we?
One of my proudest achievements in my first term was to create Space Force, the first new branch of the armed forces in over 70 years. It's a big deal. Now that Space Force is up and running, I agree with your leadership. You want this very badly, but I agree that the time has come to create a Space National Guard as the primary combat reserve of the U.S. Space Force. Very good.
What are you, some saint all of a sudden? What has the galaxy ever done for you? Why would you want to save it? Because I'm one of the idiots who lives in it.
All right. So we got the Don out here, and he is. I have been resisting wanting to get on the Trump train for the third time as much as possible. And you could go check the records. I even there was a little zhuzh there during the assassination attempt that I was riding the train, but I got back off it. And I'm like, no, principles wise, I'm back with RFK. And it seems that every person that was a legitimate consideration has gotten back in line and supported Donald Trump. So it started with Vivek, right? I think if there was anybody that could have truly put Trump in contention for the position at the Republican ticket, it would have been Vivek. Then you had Tucker. Tucker becomes in the crosshairs of Fox News, and there's arguments or rumors that he might end up being the press secretary for Donald Trump. And then Elon Musk, who has been a Democrat his entire life, has the last month been the most outspoken in supporting Donald Trump. And recently, the new developments that we're going to break down here today, it starts with RFK. And the big news this week is that RFK has removed himself as a candidate and option for us to lead the free world, and has endorsed Donald Trump, who is the first Kennedy to support the Republican ticket, which is a lifelong fabric of America, fabric of the Democrats. And I don't know, some would say that's telling, but let's kind of get a breakdown why. Brian, if you could play the
Months
video for us
ago,
here.
in April of 2023, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent. The DNC dragged us into court, state after state, attempting to erase their work and to subvert the will of the voters who had signed those petitions. It deployed DNC-aligned judges to throw me and other candidates off the ballot and to throw President Trump in jail. It ran a sham primary that was rigged to prevent any serious challenge to President Biden. Then, when a predictably bungled debate performance precipitated the palace coup against President Biden, the same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor, also without an election. They installed a candidate who was so unpopular with voters that she dropped out in 2020 without winning a single delegate. My uncle and my father both relished debate. They prided themselves on their capacity to go toe-to-toe with any opponent in the battle over ideas. They would be astonished to learn of a Democratic Party presidential nominee who, like Vice President Harris, has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for 35 days. This is profoundly undemocratic. How are people to choose when they don't know whom they are choosing? And how can this look to the rest of the world? My father and my uncle were always conscious of America's image abroad because of our nation's role as the template for democracy, the role model for democratic processes, and the leader of the free world. Instead of showing us her substance and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based upon, well, nothing. No policies, no interviews, no debates, only smoke and mirrors and balloons in a highly produced Chicago circus. There in Chicago, a string of Democratic speakers mentioned Donald Trump 147 times just on the first day. Oh, who needs a policy when you have Trump to hate? In contrast, at the RNC convention, President Biden was mentioned only twice in 4 days. I do interviews every day. Many of you have interviewed me. Anybody who asks gets to interview me. Some days I do as many as 10. President Trump, who actually was nominated and won an election, also does interviews daily. How did the Democratic Party choose a candidate that has never done an interview or debate during the entire election cycle? We know the answers. They did it by weaponizing the government agencies. They did it by abandoning democracy. They did it by suing the opposition and by disenfranchising American voters. What most alarms me isn't how the Democratic Party conducts its internal affairs or runs its candidates. What alarms me is the resort to censorship and media control and the weaponization of the federal agencies. When a U.S. president colludes with or outright coerces media companies to censor political speech, it's an attack on our most sacred right of free expression, and that's the very right upon which all of our other constitutional rights rest.
There is an interesting conversation presented here about the abandonment of democracy by the Democrats. Here is a lifelong Democrat with a family that has created and embedded themselves within this party, and he's the first to reject it. And through it, I respect and understand how difficult it can be sometimes to listen to him, especially in a long form. But that is something that we need to, while we recognize, need to get over, because what he has to say is of such value. And here is somebody with the experience. Here's somebody that is entrenched in the system that we talk about all the time and affects our life on a daily basis. And when they start sounding the alarms that we've abandoned democracy, that we have a front row seat to them violating the system they say they're going to preserve, the fact that they could hijack the primary situation by lying about the Joe Biden status to then consciously circumvent the voters and their opinion and forcefully interject their will on us. And where RFK has been an outspoken critic of some, if not many, of Trump's policies, the fact that he can overlook that, because I have those too. I have complete and clear conflicts with some of his policies, some of the things he says and does. However, some of those things on balance can be overlooked or taken when the acts across from it are so egregious. And so this is what we're experiencing as a country, is if sticks and stones are what break your bones, you are never going to give weight to some of the things that these people say matter. But if words are going to continue to cripple you and you are weakened and broken by people's opinions, then you're going to need to police what people are saying. You're going to need to worry about emotions and feelings, because clearly it has weapon-like effect. But it didn't just stop with RFK, of course. His assembly continued after the expression and broadcasting of his support for Donald Trump. He then tweeted out today, which was even more exciting, Wonder Woman has just joined the Justice League. And Tulsi is another strict and long life Democrat that has had to abandon that position for her principles and her moral compass. I still think deep down she considers herself a Democrat. She's just not of that party, of that entity. That being said, Brian, why don't we show everybody, going through the deep depths of Twitter, they also were able to use AI to show Tulsi as Wonder Woman. And damn, God bless AI, because she makes a great Wonder Woman. Wonderful Wonder Woman. Shoo. Yeah, can we give her my vote right now? Like, take my vote.
They last more than 4
They
hours.
do have.
Your doctor.
I'm just saying, they do have the same facial structure. They do have the same black hair as the actress that plays Wonder Woman. The similarities is there.
Yeah, right. She is Wonder Woman. And like, again, you have somebody, like, if we want to talk about mental health and strength and everything, so much of it is being physically strong. You have somebody that surfs on a regular basis, works out daily, takes her diet seriously, has served in the military. So she has the background to kind of know what's risk averse when they're throwing your kids to death. And yeah, we got to overlook that person because she doesn't play ball with the politicians. It's like, no, I think of the people that have their heads on their shoulders. She's got it on the most straight. But that all being said, we've got Tulsi, breaking news today, endorsing Donald Trump with, I think, a very strong presentation and position.
Privileged to be here with all of you, my brothers and sisters in uniform, especially on this day of all days. I had the privilege of joining President Trump this morning at Arlington Cemetery, where he joined 2 Gold Star families and loved ones of Staff Sergeant Hoover and Sergeant G, both of whom were 2 of the 13 killed in the Abbey Gate attack 3 years ago today in Kabul. And I can tell you, as we were there, as he laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, joining these Marines' loved ones, I felt the sorrow that he shared with them in their loss. I felt and saw his sincere appreciation for these servicemen and women who paid the ultimate price and their loved ones who continue to grieve to this day. This is personal for me, as I know it is for so many of you here. This is real. It's not just words. I first deployed to Iraq in 2005 with the Hawaii Army National Guard as a member of Charlie Med. As those of you who were deployed during that time know, it was the height of the war, and sadly, we took many casualties. And every day we were confronted with that high human cost of war and that sadness as we boarded the plane when we left, that we were leaving some of our brothers and sisters behind, only to lose others when we got home to suicide. So I mean what I say when I share with you that I know that President Trump understands the grave responsibility that a president and commander-in-chief bears for every single one of our lives. Whether you're a soldier, you're an airman, a Marine, sailor, or a coastie, he keeps us in his heart in the decisions that he makes. We saw this through his first term in the presidency, when he not only didn't start any new wars, he took action to de-escalate and prevent wars. He exercised the courage that we expect from our commander-in-chief in exhausting all measures of diplomacy, having the courage to meet with adversaries, dictators, allies, and partners alike in the pursuit of peace, seeing war as a last resort. The truth is, as we head towards our decision as a country in November, the same cannot be said about Kamala Harris. In fact, the opposite is true, and we're living through this reality today as this administration has us facing multiple wars on multiple fronts and regions around the world, and closer to the brink of nuclear war than we ever have been before. This is one of the main reasons why I'm committed to doing all that I can to send President Trump back to the White House, where he can once again serve us as our commander-in-chief. Because I am confident that his first task will be to do the work to walk us back from the brink of war. We cannot be prosperous unless we are at peace. And we can't live free as long as we have a government that is retaliating against its political opponents and undermining our civil liberties, weaponizing our very institutions against those they deem as a threat. Kamala Harris has done this over the last 3.5 years. She won't hesitate to continue that if she is elected as president. President Trump has been their first and foremost target in this because they don't want us as voters to even have the option to vote for him. I've been their most recent target, added to a secret domestic terror watch list after exposing the truth about what kind of dangers we would face if Kamala Harris is elected as president. We as Americans must stand together to reject this anti-freedom culture of political retaliation and abuse of power. We can't allow our country to be destroyed by politicians who will put their own power ahead of the interests of the American people, our freedom, and our future. I am proud to stand here before you today, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. If you love our country, as I do, if you cherish peace and freedom as we do, I invite you to join me in doing all that we can to save our country and elect President Donald J. Trump and send him back to the White House to do the tough work of saving our country and serving the people. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
So that all being said, Tulsi, I think, raises a lot of great points. I try to avoid just blindly following a political leader, but I have so little faith in what's around me that Tulsi truly, for me personally, I'm speaking for myself alone, she has become the most faithful politician or representative I can find. I'm not saying she is that totally or perfectly, but in terms of the goal, the standard, the golden standard, she is the closest to that as possible. And so for her to take on this position, something that's against the track record of her policy, the track record of her political career and her party, or what used to be her party, I think to me is telling. And the whole thickness of her position, the meat of what she's selling us is surrounding diplomacy, our world arena, and how we need to operate with all of these different political entities as it continues to shake up in different wars around us. What's crazy is it gets back to RFK's point. He goes, you can have a DNC that says Trump 200 times, and yet they won't offer you an inkling of what their policies are, what their plans are. What is your intention? We are as Tulsi suggests, we're on the verge of nuclear war. Okay, in a world we're on the verge of nuclear war, you're aware of that. What are you going to do about it? What I'm going to do about it? I'm not Trump. Okay, that doesn't answer my question, damn it. So, one, they don't offer anything. And the truth is, I'm going to fill in the gaps here for you. They don't tell you what it is, because if they did, you wouldn't want to vote for them. It's either they don't have it or it's bad. So we just distract you with the orange man because he's worse. And so circling back to the point of surrounding Tulsi, global diplomacy is kind of the priority right now. I'm experiencing in my intimate personal life people that are dying over in this fight in Ukraine. We know of I mean, you couldn't even have a DNC because first off, nobody in the Israeli-Palestinian fight even wasted a moment at the Republican convention. It's almost like they knew we don't give a shit about either of you. And because you've pandered to the Jewish group over here, we love you, we're going to do everything we can to protect you, we're going to give you billions and billions of dollars. And then you're like whispering to the Palestinian group, we're going to give you everything you need to go to those evil Jews. You've played both sides, as you've done in every psyop leading to this point in our government existence, but you've played both sides. Unfortunately, now it bit you in the ass. So now when you have a convention, both sides are protesting you. Both sides at which that didn't even show up the Republican convention. So that should tell you about the symptom of chaos you're creating. And so in a world where we're on the verge of nuclear war, China's getting intensive. They're getting closer and closer to snapping that twig in Taiwan. And Putin's not too pleased. We still got Yemen. We got the Saudis are starting to get a little bit louder. Once you start living in that realm, how are you approaching another political election with no dialogue about it. So when somebody comes in with military experience and comes in and explains, one, we're in a difficult situation, but here's the person that's best apt at getting us out of it. One, because of his diplomacy, the art of the deal. He knows how to work with people, and whether you like how he achieves it, he achieves it. But then most importantly, something that he doesn't get credited enough for, and it's because we're not allowed to talk positively about him, a strength that he has, especially in the global arena, is de-escalation. And so when Trump bombastically spouts out, well, Putin wouldn't be doing that shit if I was president, we know it to be true. Like, no matter how much you don't want it to be, in the pit of your loins, you know your neighbors in Ohio were not dying in Ukraine if Trump was president. So the de-escalation aspect is super important. So I wrap my point before I give it to you guys to kind of take it here. He has assembled quite a Justice League. He has created the Avengers. And that all kind of came together with the Iron Man. The Tony Stark of this whole thing is RFK. Yeah, he's the ringleader. Trump's the one they're all rallying behind. But I think bringing over RFK solidifies this. He's the glue to bring it all together. RFK comes out and goes, I reluctantly support Orange Man bad for the sake of democracy. He uses the word democracy. We champion this thing, and we're supposed to be the golden standard for the world, and yet we continue to break those rules. There is no democracy here, or else Kamala couldn't be a candidate. There is no democracy here, or else Biden wouldn't have been able to get away with stalling out the way he did. And there isn't democracy here if you could present a candidate without any piece of the will of the people. All right, so democracy, that is the infinity stone that is brought to us by RFK. Tulsi brings us today the diplomacy and the war aspect of it. You have somebody that is an authority and expert in the art of war, and they are telling you reluctantly, I have to, for the sake of our country, support Orange Man bad. You have somebody like Vivek, who I am reluctant to support because of the weird backgrounds that he has with the World Economic Forum or whatever the case may be. But damn it, no matter how much I want to try to have and find issue with him, he is the best and most well-spoken advocate for most of the positions we present here on this show. So you'll end up loving the guy. And so here is a guy that champions economy and is an authority on our economy. And he is saying that Orange Man bad is the best choice in this situation. Tucker was the most watched voice, most listened to voice in America. And he got shut off by his broadcasting station at the cost of hundreds of millions of dollars to that station to rip his contract, because son of a bitch, he just won't stop telling them the truth, and the lemmings can't know the truth, and somebody's got to shut him up. It's worth $100 million. Just take him off. Just turn him off. And so he comes in championing free speech. Right on his coattails is a billionaire that spent hundreds of billions of dollars to own the town square, the digital town square that is Twitter, to then flush out for the public, hey, just so you know, the government has been committing illegal atrocities against you all, censoring your freedoms, and I just want to make you all aware, and I want to straighten that out. I want to shut up their avenues for intervention, and I want to make this as free as possible. So then you've got the champion for censorship. JD Vance, I think, is just the Hawkeye. He's just kind of in the back. Nobody knows what the hell he's really doing. He gets his own TV show and everybody cheers him on, but nobody really knows what he's bringing to the table, but he's at the table. So I can't really tell you what JD Vance is doing, but we've got our Avengers. All right. What are your thoughts?
Oh, my. Oh, God. I'm not too terribly surprised. Tulsi Gabbard is endorsing Donald Trump. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see that from a mile away. You've seen the path. It's not all that surprising. I'm actually a little surprised RFK did drop out and went full in on the Trump vote. So my hope, my genuine hope, and to be an optimist in this whole situation is this is just all Trump's doing. He single-handedly, he's talking to these folks, he's making these deals happen, and he's going, all right, hey, we need to combine forces. We need to be together here so we focus our efforts on me. Let's be honest. Let's focus our efforts on me, and not take away any of the votes. Because I'm actually disappointed. I really wanted to vote for RFK. I wanted the third party vote, not so much because I really 100% agree with all of RFK's thoughts and policies, but I do want to give credence to the third party vote. I think if we get away from this 2-party system, I think we're going to be a lot better off. This comes to my pessimistic point. I think this is all party driven by the Republicans. So the Republican Party goes, hey, let's get all these voices here together. Let's combine votes. Because the most likely RFK voter is probably also the most likely Trump voter as well. So if we take him off the board,
because they're the only ones thinking on their own.
Well, and we also
there's the Lemming Party, and then there's the Free Thinker Party that is either getting swept up on the Trump train or just hoping and latching on to anything they could get their fingers on.
There's a story that came out not too long ago where both Michigan and Wisconsin still have RFK on the ballot. He's told everyone, I am not on the ballot. Please don't vote for me for president. But they still have him on the ballot for Wisconsin and Michigan, 2 pretty notable swing states. So I don't think
that's a problem.
It doesn't take too many brain cells rubbed together to understand. If RFK is on the ballot, there might be some idiots who vote for him instead of Donald Trump, and then that's one less vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's
so we keep doing that, and he cannot withdraw his name from the election. Now they're going to claim, well, this is just part of the presidential
What a great
process.
problem to have. Like, imagine being like, oh darn, looks like I'm on every presidential ballot, and like, as a human being, that feels pretty awesome.
What if he ends up winning too, and he pulls out?
Well, you can't win, but I think if you get a significant number, it'd be like, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
I hope he doesn't get a.
I think it's 5% for it to be a third party.
I think it's 5% nationwide too. It's not like let's say he gets like 5% of each state's vote. It's just we just wasted 5% of those votes. That probably.
And again, back to your point, it would likely be Trump votes.
Yeah. So we're getting in a real Ralph Nader situation here. So I'm a little upset. I really wish he would just go whole hog and just keep going, even if he's not going to win, but continue to build that third party momentum. So I'm not too terribly excited about that. The Elon thing, he said he was of the left, but I don't. Where was his left policies? Where exactly? He was pro marijuana.
Whoa.
Where was
this
his left
comes
policies?
back to my philosophical position against Democrats for the longest time, which is they are not liberal. They champion the title liberal because it gives them the ability to fight under the veil of good. So they've played this word game of, well, no. The sheepskin I wear is good. I'm liberal. But they actually are not liberal in any sense of the word. So I think even if Elon wasn't championed by the Democrats, just like me, Trump, RFK, and Tulsi, all of our policies have been liberal from the start. There is not a single policy that says this drinking fountain cannot have trannies drinking from it. There is not a single policy that says blacks can't get behind cars. Everything is, because patriotism's racist now, we're not allowed to talk about it, but everything is, we are one, all of us, no matter what color or what you've got dangling, we're all one. And truthfully, that's liberal. So I don't want to get lost in the weeds of, well, you weren't really a Democrat because the Democrats didn't claim you. Who cares? Deep down, for the longest time, go back to like 2012 when this guy was the crazy kook telling us everybody's going to have an electric car and it's going to be a regular fabric of our society. When he made the first electric car, he was a kook then. There is no world you're going to make the claim that 2011, 2012, Elon Musk, who created PayPal and then is developing the electric car, there's no claim he's conservative. So or Republican. So one, he has the track record to show that he voted Democrat, right? Obama up until Trump. And then and who knows? I don't know what he voted for in the 2016 election, but he definitely wasn't outwardly supporting Trump. So I'm just saying, yeah, he probably wasn't a Democrat by political title, but he was liberal in the philosophical sense. And it should show you that people that are strictly philosophically liberal, they tend to were Democrat and now forced in the box of Republican.
I guess I've seen I think we've both seen the tweet he sent out where he was just a little left of center, and then someone pushed him, and I was like, well, you're now all the way over here. I'm still left of center. Some of that I buy, because I think the big downfall, or I don't know if downfall is maybe the right term, but the movement for the Democratic Party to go away from blue collar working class values that aren't rooted in like religion or kind of these base conservative values. They aren't rooted in that. We're pro union. We're pro kind of choice for the kind of the everyman, kind of the Bill Clinton party, or even maybe we go a little bit further beyond that into this amalgamation of, well, we just start, I don't know, like saying mean things about minorities is kind of bad, and that's a lot of their identity, and we continue to triumph that and go as we've seen with like a lot of these Rust Belt areas that were, I don't want to say former swing states, but definitely were swing states. A lot of those were the Trump voters. Like, I'm blue collar, I'm working class, I have these values. I don't necessarily care too much about this whole religion thing, but I do want to see my government work for me and not the other way around. So I see some disenfranchisement from the Democrat Party on that, and I think that's what we're starting to see a lot of that move to. I really quite honestly wish they moved back to that, because then we get more on working class values, like every the everyman kind of deal.
I could vote for a Democrat.
Yes, but I keep coming back to this whole thing where we're placating one party, because we're now the Republican Party is starting to go, well, this is going to be the end of democracy. We let the Democrats run it, and the Democrats are telling everyone, well, it's going to be the end of democracy. We let the Republicans run it. Well, which one is it? Who's ending democracy? Is everyone trying to end democracy? Because that's probably the route I'm going to take.
The takeaway is democracy is over.
Yeah, pick my flavor of democracy's ending, because I can guarantee you're going to like the taste of it more. And that's where I'm starting to get pessimistic about the whole thing. They're used to, like, I saw it at RFK. I'm like, man, there's a little bit of traction. Just give me enough to maybe the next election we can get maybe 10%. That's really what I wanted. So I personally just don't like seeing this all come together at the same time right here, right now, because now we have to play this. Now we're going to play the democracy is going to end for everybody if you don't choose my side. So it's this rock fighting thing. And on the Kamala Harris side too, if you go to her website, she has no policies still. Yeah. Doesn't have it. I'll forgive her for like the first couple weeks that she was nominated to nominate herself president or whatever. I'll give you a couple of that. We got to put it together. We got to get the website. These things take time. So this is a snap decision because Joe Biden. All right, I'll buy into that narrative. But now we're all in. We're past the DNC convention. We're here to actually vote and go down to brass tacks. And right now, the only thing you go to the website, you can donate. You can learn about her history. You can learn about Tim Walz's history. And that's it. There's no, well, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z as president. But I think both administrations are also going to be forced in this box of, here's all these things I'm going to promise you. Well, you were in power and you didn't do any of these, or if you did, you kind of half-assed it. Now you're telling me you're going to do it? Like what? Which one is it? And both of them are going to. I'd be interested to see if they actually really go down that rabbit hole of, well, this whole right now it's the tip thing. Why didn't you do that when you're president, Mr. Trump? Well, the tip thing, Kamala Harris, at least
we won't tax tips. That's what he said.
Yeah, we won't tax tips. And Kamala Harris can be like, well, I just wasn't in power. They wouldn't let me do anything. Well, why wouldn't they? Vice president. Why wouldn't they let you do anything? Interesting. But we are.
Who's they? Comes back to the common theme. Who wasn't letting you do something, VP? Veep.
We can't tell you, or else everyone's just going to get a little upset right now.
yeah. I like that. See? That was a clever full circle. If you've been here for 3 hours, you can appreciate the full circle. All right. Silent, what are your thoughts on this whole deal? The perspective from the hat above in Canada.
From an outsider perspective, I mean, the DNC looks like a mess. That's what it is. It's just a mess. They need to organize better. They have very limited time, 4 months. So it's like they need to get their shit together. They really do. That's what I'm saying. Because Kamala ain't it. Like, it's just not. She's not. You know, like, they need to put up someone better. Hell, I'd say even bring Bernie. He might have a better chance. You know,
which is insane. The fact that 2 elections ago, they again circumvented the process, broke democracy in your face. We all chose Bernie and they wanted the convicted felon or the felon who is not convicted. And we just let him get away with that. We just let him do it in our face. Again, this is what's crazy about what we're experiencing right now. Hillary Clinton, truthfully, would probably beat Trump this time. Like, if you ran Hillary, man, I really do think you've got something. Why not?
A fight for sure. I think so.
More than
way
camel
more than
waiting.
camel. Yeah,
like,
true. True.
And why didn't you run that? Michael Obama probably would have done better. Why didn't you go with him? There's something here that it's like this was forced. Bernie would for sure change the dialogue. Why was he not a consideration? Why did you come in full circle? Why was somebody that was so free thinking and just solely every decision was just supporting not me, what my people that I'm here to represent? When you force that person to go be an Avenger in Trump's team, like, she would have all of our votes. Bernie would have all of our votes. Hillary would have all of your dumbasses votes. Still not mine, but yours. Why aren't they running that person? So the real takeaway, distill it. It is because this is the person you can control. This is the person that plays ball, that carries out our will, not you peons. We got Nolette here. On a lighter note, the DNC shouldn't have had Megan Thee Stallion performing. It was truly crazy to see. That was insane. And
like I said,
it goes back to RFK's position of it. They want to distract you with the smoke and mirrors, because the second you start distilling it for the reality it is, you're gonna truly see through the facade. I don't know, Ricky. What are your thoughts on this whole deal?
Okay, I look. I don't like to go on a tangent because I'm not a good speaker like that. But let me just say, let's start from Nolette's point. You know, the only reason Megan Thee Stallion is there, hip hop route. She's with Rock Nation, a representation of Jay-Z and Beyonce. Jay-Z and Beyonce has a publicly endorsed her. They lied and said Beyonce was going to perform at the DNC. No Beyonce. That was a big shit on TikTok. Boom.
It was big.
Other crazy shit. Other crazy shit is Lil Pump, which is worse than Megan Thee Stallion, where it came on stage. I think in Atlanta, it was like, let me get my Lil Pump voice. Yeah. I love Kamala Harris because she stand on business. I don't got the voice, but it's crazy. Lil Pump, that's way worse irrelevant than Megan Thee Stallion. It's kind of crazy. Like that's to go with Silent Point. Like, the DNC is literally in shambles, and they didn't have to be at this point. They had course correction because people been complaining as soon as Biden got in office, and they could have corrected and divert a whole different way, and they chose not to. They chose to stand on business, and this was stand on business get them. But you have so much people that's like just following the field and just going with it, and whoever is the head DNC that nominates the person or whatever is like, we still got the black vote. Black Lives Matter is still going on, even after the fraud and shit. And black people actually waking up, black people on the internet saying, black Americans saying like, yo, Black Lives Matter is the organization was bullshit. We understand what the message was, but the organization was all fraud bullshit. Why y'all think just pushing a black face in front of us with no substance, no like good track record, like an average black person that hear the story of like, yeah, she locks up single black moms that couldn't get their kids to school because the kid was bad behaving because there was no father in the house. Why you gonna lock me up? Why I gotta pay for that? I'm trying my best. She was locking moms up in California. She rejected a guy from getting out from debt row. So like her track record is not great. She's Jamaican. but he's claiming Black American. Like I don't know what Kamala, Miss Harris.
Oh man,
VP Harris.
You just created
VP
a racial
Harris.
discretion against her.
VP Harris. I don't know where she really stands. When she speak, a couple weeks ago, you had the video up when she just keep repeating the same thing over and over. And I'm like, what are you about to do? Where's the substance? Like, where's the energy? Like, you go to Atlanta, you got a Southern accent. You go to the Midwest, you try to have a Midwest little twang. You go to the West Coast, you're back to your California free living shit. Like, I don't like, if people are still rocking with her, it's ignorant. I can honestly say it's ignorant because there's evidence out there that shows she's a chameleon. Kamala the chameleon. It baffles me. And to the Trump thing. Before you said it, I literally been allowed. I'm like, Trump, okay, Captain America. RFK, what the F? Tulsi, I rock with Tulsi. Like, since the first episode of Tulsi on Joe Rogan, and she laid out everything, I was rocking with Tulsi since then. I never knew who Tulsi was. And then she had the debate. I think the debate where when she shamed Kamala on stage, that was brought her. And then she went on JRE, and I was rocking with her. Then I was like, yo, JD is just the Ohio guy. Ohio, I'm biased to Ohio people, and call me that. And Vivek, I love Vivek because he goes in the fire, no matter the platform, and talk about it may be bullshit to some, and he may be great to some. He talks about his policies, and he have a dialogue. He doesn't have an argument. He has a dialogue about it. How can he bridge the gap?
I just love Ricky's like, I would never vote for her because you put Megan Thee Stallion on there. But damn it, JD Vance is from Ohio.
I am dead. I don't know none of JD Vance policies or anything, but I know he's from Ohio. Okay. That's all I know about JD Vance. I swear to you. So when that happens and I see all these people coming across, I'm like, damn, something is really wrong over here for everybody to be switching. If Trump was an independent, this would be the greatest party movement ever. To have people just coincide, but because it's a two-party state, a two-party system, is not as significant. It is still an impact, but still not as significant. I just wish he was a more in the middle guy and just brought in JD, Vivek, Tulsi, and RFK. The impact would have been like more. I don't know. It just been more.
No, I absolutely agree with you because it's still in the back of my mind here is
this a Republican, and that's the thing.
So, Brian, if you could, so I just to piggyback off of Ricky's position and Silent's position, a thing that I wasn't gonna. These weren't planned videos for today's episode, but the dialogue continues to circle around how much of a shamble the DNC has been, and I have two perfect videos for us. This is the first one, Brian.
All right, Edwin is from Venezuela, and we're going to take Edwin into the DNC so that he can meet the Democrats who want open borders. He should meet his new friends, hear the speakers, and learn about the Democratic Party. So, Edwin, let's head in, shall we? This is Edwin from Venezuela, migrant, invited in by the Democrat Party. He'd like to come into the Democratic Convention.
You have to get your credentials. Yep, you have to go to Jackson.
Yeah. Wait, you mean he needs credentials and permission to come in to get past the wall?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like a border wall in a way, huh?
Yeah. You have to have ID, credentials. You can come in.
To come into the United States?
No.
Not to come to the United States. Okay, but to come to the Democratic Convention.
Here,
okay. You believe in security. You believe in securing a boundary. Edwin can't come in. That's all I know. I commend you on guarding this border. You're doing it very effectively. We have been
doing a great job, Bert.
From the DNC credentialing office because we're not permitted to be here. We don't have permission. We didn't go through the application process. It seems like the United States would use similar rules about crossing the U.S. border. DNC doesn't believe in that, but they do believe in it for their own convention.
Convenient. So he didn't need credentials to get through the border, but he needed credentials to get through your little DNC border here. This one is the best from the least likely source. When I could tell you a championed position for the Republicans was going to come from Chris Cuomo at the DNC, I doubt you would have believed it. Brian, let's roll it.
Reveal a reality to you that has to be spoken to here, okay? Greg, look at the ring of sweets, okay? This is not unique to Democrats. There is a game of money. When people talk about uniparty, we are strangled by the money reality in our politics. Those sweets start at 500 grand. You think there's like a teacher group up in there? You think there's like the Cub Scouts of Columbia County, South Carolina, that's up in those boxes? Those boxes are filled with the same people that they say they're going to regulate. They are literally looking down on the faithful and being told, yeah, we're going to break down on them. We're going to make them pay their share. They paid 500, 700, $1 million, $1.5 million to have those seats. And the same thing is true with the Republican side. And they're going to take them down. They're going to change how it is. They are looking down from on high at the people who make the difference in their communities. And that is the reality of politics.
Wow.
You know what the thing is? Yo, I can tell that I remember it was like 2012 when I start questioning the Democratic Party. I just got out of high school. I was working for like a couple of years and I didn't have health insurance. You know what I mean? But Obama was taxing I was getting $100 back on my tax return. And that point, I start questioning everything about the Democratic Party. Because I work, and I couldn't afford health insurance. Right. But you're going to take the extra I'm getting back? Like, that was, I can remember, like, RFK say his family and everything. And now I can remember when I start questioning politics.
Can I make a really hot take
that's
here?
Crazy.
Can I make a really, really hot take? I'm going to tell you what, Ricky. It's almost as if they've created a system to keep you and maybe people like you from receiving a paycheck. Because notice you started giving a flying fuck the second you had a paycheck and you cared about where that money was fucking going. So if I could create a system where I fool you into thinking I give a shit about you and your mom and your hood, and then I cripple your ass so you never make a penny, well, then you never give a shit what I'm doing with your money. But the second you got a paycheck and I'm stealing half of that bitch and you're looking at what we're doing, well, fuck, we lost you. So then I'm going to make you out to be a racist. So then you don't want to be my enemy. It's convenient how this whole thing works. Okay, I'm going to present a wrapping thought and then we'll give it to the horn here so we can start landing this plane. But I think David has presented the strongest position here in that if I need to highlight disappointment or the problem I see, it's that I think we as a society and as a community were cheated from a political opportunity to change the political landscape. We are in a bipartisan chokehold that has been the centerpiece of my political grievance throughout the whole tenure of the Rethink Tank. There isn't a, so here's where I'm at, a piece that we've done that hasn't circled around pretty much every political problem we have is central around this chokehold. I've used the example before. It's like Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Half of Coca-Cola's marketing scheme is to sell Coca-Cola. The other half of Coca-Cola's marketing scheme is to convince you into thinking the only other option is Pepsi. That way, if you're not considering me, you're only considering Pepsi. And if Pepsi is doing the same exact mechanism, that means RC Cola never gets to be a consideration. And so what I do think RFK did was cheat us from the opportunity from creating a precedent in our country that changes the culture, that changes the atmosphere and the way we approach our politics. At the same time, I don't find that to be the end-all, be-all for our future, because I feel while it was a hard decision to make, it was the necessary decision he had to make. Because I think we all agree in this room, no matter what, there was nothing Trump was going to do to get us to write his name down again. It was no matter what going to be RFK Jr. And so for the sake of our country, we know it can't be any of the blue jersey demons. We know that. And he, being a true blood blue jersey person his whole life, for him to see that above all, this team, the blue team, cannot win. Whether it's me, who's the better option, or whether Trump isn't the option, above all, the worst potential outcome is any one of these demons winning. And so, yes, you're right. Your forecast is right. If we would have gotten even 3 to 4, I mean, Kanye had a significant number that should have compelled some of you boomer ass losers, to believe that a third party could be an option. But you were raised by the CIA. You were never going to think a third party is the option. So we were cheated, because Kanye should have done that. RFK would have done that, because he would have been even more significant cut of the pie. And then we all would have been like, oh shit, I guess we could start thinking about that. We could start taking third parties serious. And then the next election, we are cooking with fire. That all being said, I don't want to get lost in the weeds here, but I was thinking the other day, what the hell happened to Gary Johnson? That was the most legitimate third-party option we've ever seen. He didn't slow down Trump. Trump stole that bitch right from under Hillary with no impact from Gary Johnson, and he was the one that was getting most of our attention. 90% of the people that wanted to vote for Bernie and had that stolen from them then were looking to Gary Johnson. He had a significant number, not one enough to change the culture in our politics, but then what? He just disappears? That guy ran for president, was a significant figure, and now has what? No, he's not on a podcast. He's got no commentary on the political landscape as we see it. Was he forced out, or was he a psyop? These are the interesting aspects that, unfortunately, the system has forced us to consider. That's where we're at. I don't believe anything that's around me, because 90% of it has been a charade. So bringing it all full circle, I wanted to give the third party credence, like you said, and make it that option, build the third party out. And RFK was going to do that. However, with the strong force behind Trump at this point, you could see, one, this is what's best for the country. I could only cripple what is best for the country. And most importantly, this is my opinion. I'm going to end on an opinion. That team behind him, Tulsi, RFK, Elon, Tucker, and Vivek, all 5 people I'd vote for president before Donald Trump. If you have, and vote before really most of y'all. Those are like top 5 human beings that should be running any ship that we have. If all of them in tandem are supporting Orange Man bad, and the only thing telling me the evil Indian bitch that likes talking about school bus tires, if the only mechanism telling me that she has support is an evil propaganda machine, if the Avengers lose at this point, the Capitol situation probably will and should be real.
You know what this means?
Put on by our government. But there is no world she wins with legitimacy if that is the ticket she's up against. It's a whole bunch of dead guys, demons, and crooks, and the Avengers. If they lose, enough of your dead grandmas voted for her for this thing to not be real anymore. And we need to start saying it carte blanche. All right. Pickle Gallery, rapping thoughts. What are your things?
You know what this proves? And I forgot to say earlier. Trump know how to bring people together. And you need that underworld stage. You need how to put your pride aside, put your whatever aside, and y'all need to come together on maybe this is a finite of a thing, but for the greater good. He can put his pride aside. And that right there just shows way more than a whole party and the person that they chose to be the face of their party.
Totally. Silent, rapping thoughts.
as I was saying earlier, the DNC is in shambles and they're a mess, and it doesn't really seem like they're gonna have any better options than Kamala for the next few months. And I think that's gonna cost them the election because, like you said, if some of the top candidates who are actually, I would argue and agree with you, would do a better job at presidency than Trump, if they're endorsing him, then that just tells you everything you need to know.
Right.
That's
Totally.
it. It's game over. It's done. Right. And I think the DNC is just going to keep doing the whole smoke and mirrors tactic because they know it worked in the past. And they honestly really think, based on how in shambles they are, that it's going to work again.
No,
and I don't think it's going to work, but we shall see come December.
And some would say if it does, we should really give it a side eye and question it a bit. I don't know. What are your wrapping thoughts, David?
Well, we'll see how. So I think the DNC's done a pretty good job of being very focused and very narrow about their focus with Kamala Harris. 'Cause right now, it's been nothing but positive articles, positive think pieces.
We're the party of happiness. We're just here to have you happy.
Exactly. There's no negativity. Everything's going to be okay. It seemed like once Biden gave the endorsement for her, it just went all positive all the time. There was maybe about 24 or 48 hours of dissent. And then after that, it's like, nope, we all got to just move in the same line together no matter what. So we'll see what happens. I think she has her first sit-down interview, I think broadcast like CNN or something like that, but she's going to have that first interview. All right, we're going to see what happens. And I'm very curious to see what happens with this first debate. I don't think she's not a good debater, and she's not necessarily good, quick on her feet. Even her own staff will say the same thing. That's some of the excuses we get. Well, she laughs a bunch because she's just nervous by the cameras. That's kind of going to be your whole life for a while. So you better either get used to it or you're going to fail under the pressure. So we'll see. I'm curious how that happens. When we saw Biden for the first, well, not really for the first time, but full go, that debate unrestricted for about it was a good 2.5 hours. Okay. Now the American people finally saw, okay, I don't want this. And maybe I'm not really convinced the other guy, but I definitely don't want this. So do we get the same reflect, or does she just turn it around and all of a sudden we get kind of Trump looks old in comparison to her? I'm not sure. I'm not entirely excited by I choose party A or party B. That's telling me democracy is going to die unless I vote for them. That's not great. But Jesus, it's the only option we have. So at least in this case, we know what either administration has done with both things. So, I guess I know what I'm getting.
Out of 8 years, which 4 were better?
Yeah. So Kamala's maybe a little bit different, but it's going to be the same network. It's going to be the same framework. She's not as politically authoritative as Trump is to make things happen. So it's just, she's going to be, it's whatever the DNC, I'm going to rubber stamp whatever the DNC wants. So that's, we'll see what happens. When we have that first debate, I think that's going to be a pretty good episode to kind of break some of that down and see what we think about it right now. But right now it's, voting for party A or party B, really. That's what gets me pessimistic about the whole thing.
Stuck back in the binary. There's your SpongeBob Brian, rapid thoughts.
Yeah, I think Silent said it really well. It's a pig pen out there.
Ooh-wee! Love it. All right, guys, we appreciate you joining us. Don't forget, the whole purpose of the live show is to get you involved. So I appreciate everybody that was diving in the comments and adding that extra dynamic to the show. I mean, come on, the SpongeBob laugh doesn't come out unless you bring it out of us. But we do this show every week. You can find us live at 7 p.m. Eastern time here. We also do a live show on Sundays that are now going to be going to 11 a.m. Now, Brian and I are doing it this weekend for the last time at 9 a.m. But next week, we're going to be going back to it'll be a whole new setup. Very exciting. And then following that, also on Sundays at noon, we're going to be Eastern time. We're going to be kicking off our new Sunday football review. And we're going to be talking football, everything that's going on, college, NFL. Get excited because the Browns are taking it to the Super Bowl this year. But be a part of the conversation with these live dialogues. But guys, we go across the platforms on different shows, different channels, but you can find it all in one central place, and that's at our website at www.rethinktankpodcast.com. So again, thank you everybody for joining us live, but we'll catch you next week. Peace.